this would be a history so torn with wars. The sky seems grayer in our hearts. It's grayer in our hearts. I could have sworn it would end in misery, turning still, and we're also learning somewhere hidden out there, something's greater than our hearts. The storms of life may shake our ground, a greater peace still dwells in our hearts. The dreams we build before such a mystery, for the world is yearning still, and our hearts keep burning. We dare to believe there's something greater than our hearts. The storms of life may shake our ground, a greater peace still dwells in our hearts. We build may fall apart, a deeper hope still runs in our hearts. Fear no harm, we are ruled by a far greater love. We're never alone, all else may go wrong, still will there be a love greater than our hearts. We build may fall apart, a deeper hope still runs in our hearts. Fear no harm, we are ruled by a far greater love. We're never alone, all else may go wrong, still will there be a love greater than our hearts.
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. Mary, help of Christians, pray for us. Good morning, educators, guidance counselors, and administrators. This is Tina de Guzman from Don Bosco Press, Inc., and welcome to Salesiana Books Chalk Talk Online. We are now in our second year making Chalk Talk online. But for those who missed last week's episode and who are attending for the first time, Salesiana Books Chalk Talk is a teacher training program that Don Bosco Press provides for its partner schools. Even with the current situation, DBPI continues to aid our beloved clients and create opportunities for training Thus, we bring you Chalk Talk Online. Today, we are in the second episode of the Growing Brain Project series, and it is entitled Depression and Anxiety in Our Children, Red Flags and Must Knows. Last week's episode on internet and gaming addiction was interesting and very insightful. Today, as we talk about one of the most alarming and relevant issues experienced by many young students, even adults, I know that we will also be learning a lot. Your Saturday morning will surely be productive and informative. So let's start. To formally welcome you and to introduce our speaker, may I call in the General Manager of Don Bosco Press Inc., Ms. Geraldine Gibe.
Thank you, Tina. Anxiety and depression are two of the most common mental concerns in our society. Then Bosco Press brings to you today, as mentioned by Tina, a second of a four-part series of our Chalk Talk Online in partnership with Growing Brain Project. The Growing Brain Project is the official flagship outreach program whose aim is to instill awareness, adequate and proper information, and advocacy training on childhood neurologic disorders from health professionals down to families in the community level. The Growing Brain Project is a program of the Child Neurology Society, which is an organization of child neurologists. It was established in 1993, whose primary objective is to advance neurologic care for children, for Filipino children. Before we introduce our speaker, I'd like to have a poll, please, because we are coming from all over. We'd like to know where you're from. Can we start the poll? I suppose it's not surprising that we see that many of us are coming from the NCR. We have a lot also coming from the Davao region in Sargen. There are more answering the poll. Let's wait. Okay, now, so we have 41% of 41 are coming from NCR, that's 32%. 26% is coming from Region 3. 21% is coming from the Davao region. And we have some from Western Visayas as well, and some from Region 1, 2, and CAR. We also have attendees from Southern Tagalog and Mimaropa, Region 4. No? Okay, that's it. We'll go on to the next poll. We'd like to know if you were here last week or if this is your first time with us. Were you here last week? We're glad to see that many of you have been with us last week and are still here today. We have 2 more Saturdays to go after this, so we'd like you to sign up for those as well. So we have 74%, about 3/4 who are on their second session today, and 26%, about 1/4, who are here for the first time. I hope those who are here for the first time will be with us in the next 2 Saturdays to come. Now, to introduce our speaker is Dr. Teresa Martinez. She's a doctor of medicine with a specialization in adult neurology and psychiatry, and a subspecialization on child neurology and developmental medicine. She earned a Doctor of Medicine degree and a BS Psychology degree at the University of Santo Tomas. She also had her residency for adult neurology and psychiatry at the same university hospital. She's currently the chair of the Child Neurology Specialty Board, a faculty member at the UST Faculty of Medicine and Surgery, as well as in La Consolacion University, Philippines College of Medicine. She's also the Medical Affairs Manager at GlaxoSmithKline Philippines and a medical advisor in Novartis Singapore and Novartis Philippines. She's currently affiliated with various organizations, among them the Philippine Neurological Association, the Philippine Psychiatric Association, the Philippine Medical Association, and the Child Neurology Society Philippines, who has this Growing Brain project, with whom Don Bosco Press has partnered. We'd like to call in Dr. Teresa Martinez. Dr. Teresita Martinez, I'm sorry. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Let me share my screen. So good morning, everyone. Before I start with my lecture, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Don Bosco Press and the Don Bosco in general for giving the Child Neurology Society Philippines the platform to reach out to you and continue with our advocacy. So I am tasked to discuss on depression and anxiety in children and teens, and all the red flags and all the things, hopefully all the things that we must know about this disorder. So, as a disclosure and disclaimer, no, I am not a child psychiatrist. My training is on adult neurology and child neurology and the general psychiatry. I have always been an advocate of mental health, and there are no other conflicts of interest to declare, save for the fact that I am related to Brother Melo. Okay, so this would be the objectives of my talk. I would give you an overview of how children and adolescents are coping, or should I say struggling, with the ongoing pandemic and quarantine. I would be presenting to you some red flags which we have to look for, and to discuss the state of mental health, especially now during pandemic, the quarantine, and the social media era. And finally, and hopefully, no, I could provide you with some possible solutions on strengthening resilience in our children and the adolescents. So this would be the content of my talk. But let me pose this question to you, no? And hopefully we would be able to answer this by the end of this module. No? So how much do we know of what is happening with our children? Particularly now that we are given more time with them, you are all working from home, or most of you are working from home in most days of the week, so you would have more time spent with your children. And at the same time, you are given also the chance to teach, while online. So meron, how much of that is how much of the of everything that we have to know about the children are available for us, to really study further, about our children. So the first question is, where are we now, so are we still sane, amid this pandemic and amid the quarantine, the continuing quarantine? Because the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak is in many ways unprecedented, in both the scale of this challenge and the scale of public health response, and at the same time, it is the first ever global pandemic to happen in a social media era, so everything is at the tip of our fingers, so lahat ng kailangan nating malaman about COVID-19 easily available to us. So in a way, this is kind of unique for COVID-19. And not only that, it is because of this continuous and ongoing pandemic, we are also it has also paved the way to another form of pandemic, which is the mental health crisis. And pag inopen natin ang ating internet and all those, ang makikita natin are, all these people becoming more depressed, we are seeing more and more, there's a spike in the incidences of health crisis, mental health crisis in general. And there are quite a number of studies that look into this, no, particularly in the Philippines. So this is one study which looked into the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines. And they found out that there is moderate to severe anxiety and depression among Filipinos that were surveyed, no? So look at the incidents, no? There are 16.9, 28.8, and 13.4 experiencing depression, anxiety, and higher stress levels, respectively. And if you try to look at this one, it is of the moderate, no, moderate to severe anxiety and depression. If you compare this to global prevalence or global incidence of anxiety, no, it is just around 3.4, no? So it would range from 2 to 7. So mga 3.4 ang mean average. Ang depression would go lang as high as 3.8 to siguro 7 na yung pinaka-highest. But look at this, no? So there is really an increase in the number of cases recently. So this also study revealed that it is common among young age group of about 12 to 21.4, those that are single or living alone with no children, and those that would have student status. No? So you would notice later on that all of these studies would look into a subset of students and look into their mental health welfare as well. So I'll be presenting to you quite a couple of studies that would present such, about students. And the student status, what is most prevalent among them is a higher anxiety subscale scores. So this naman looked into the Asian countries, no? So we looked into the 7 middle income countries in Asia and compare them. And you would see that the Philippines rank third. This is not a good ranking, no? So if you could see here from the bottom, which is Thailand would be the one that would have the highest scores in almost all of the subscales. So in terms of the impact of the event, stress, anxiety, depression, highest Thailand, and then second would be Pakistan, and we are on the third, no? So again, this is not a good thing, no? This is not a good spot, okay? And this study also looked into the subsets of people who would have those higher anxiety, depression, and stress levels. And they found out that it is more common in younger individuals, so similar with the one that we found among the Filipinos, so less than 30 years old, those that are single and separated, and those that would have higher educational background, and those who have experienced discrimination and contact with people with COVID-19. Okay? So another study which naman compared the Philippines, which is of lower middle income country, versus China, which is an upper middle income country, and they were able to gather around 849 participants from the Philippines and 861 participants from China. And they found out, so tayo yung orange, the Philippines is orange, that we would have a higher rates of stress, anxiety, and depression compared to our Chinese counterpart, Kasi they are considered as higher middle income. Tayo yung low and poor resource, But you would see here, what is peculiar with this particular study is that the Philippines, which is the orange one, would have lower impact of event score. And what does this mean? Although this was not stipulated in the study itself, pero sa akin lang to, This is just me, It could mean two things. One is because the Filipinos are considered to be the resilient race. So mas resilient na tayo sa mga ganito. So hindi na natin masyadong nararamdaman yung impact ng event. But another thing could be a reason, and this is somehow negative, because the Filipinos are so used to catastrophes, one after the other, So sumabog ang Taal, tapos nagkaroon ng flooding and then typhoon, no? So parang we resign to the fact that we are always hit by catastrophes. So parang ang threshold natin is higher, that we wouldn't be feeling much of the impact already. And that's not a good thing, no? For me, that's something that is a negative thing. And it could be that the reason why the impact of the event is higher for China, no, as compared to us. Okay, so out of the studies, as mentioned, so the Filipinos reported significantly higher levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. And at the same time, we also reported more of the physical symptoms, no? And I particularly highlighted here the dissatisfaction with the health information because compared to the Chinese population which were studied, no, mas ano sila, mas convinced sila and mas satisfied sila with the type of health information that are given to them as compared to the Filipino counterparts in that particular study. This particular study also looked into the subsets of students. Di ba parang lahat sila would look into students, yung mga younger individuals, because they found out that mas common, mas nakikita yung mental health issues among students and children. So in this particular study, no, between China and the Philippines, they found out that students were afraid that confinement and learning online would hinder their progress in their studies. And furthermore, students in the Philippines, no, as opposed to the general Filipinos na included in the study, scored higher in the impact of the event. And they could only surmise that it is secondary to the differences with no standard mode of delivery of education in the Philippines, no? So alam naman natin, no, those that would have enough resources like the private schools and those that could afford would have synchronous classes, no, or in a way some form of like a blended type of learning, no, as compared to the poor resourced ones or those that aren't ready yet, who would just be modular or purely asynchronous, or baka some has nag-stop pa talaga ng pag-aaral. So we have this parang differences as compared to China. When I'm trying to look at the way they are doing things there, no, they are in a way exercising already limited face-to-face na, even in Wuhan. So they started as an online lang na parang tayo, but eventually they're moving towards that of blended learning already. No? So in a way, they are progressing. And this is why the impact of event for the Filipinos is rather higher, no, as compared to the Chinese na mga students, no. So one particular study looked into the Chinese naman students, no. So this was done in Wuhan, and this looked into 10,703 students 12 to 18 years old that were quarantined and were forced in a way to do online class, no? And they found out that there are quite a number of them who experienced anxiety and depression. So this is something that we have to look into, no? So hindi lang ang Philippines, look at that, almost quarter of the students experience anxiety and depression, very high and alarming. Okay. And but these are purely numbers, no? These are surveys done. These are purely parang it's a questionnaire that the students or the Filipinos have to answer in order for us to go through this and study the numbers, no? But what about what is happening inside our homes, no? Kasi tayo yung mas exposed sa mga bata, no? As educators, we are the ones also who are exposed to them during the online class. So we get to have a glimpse of what is really happening, no, during the pandemic and during this time of the quarantine. So now we'll go through the red flags, no, the warning signs, the telltale signs that we have to note of in order for us to understand better what is anxiety and what is depression and what are stresses, no, that our children are experiencing, particularly at this point, no. So it is important because there is a different approach in the mental health issues in children and adolescents. And you would realize later as we go through this module and as I progress with my presentation that they are so different from us, no? aside from the fact that children also feel, no, what is important in managing patients, in children particularly, is that the interventions need to focus on nurturing resilience in children and adolescents. So para tayong preventive, no, when it comes to children, we don't wait na meron na silang depression, meron na silang anxiety before we proceed with whatever we need to do, no, because we need to focus on the prevention, and that is by nurturing resilience. Because if you are aware of the facts na ang FDA approved medications for mental health issues or mental health problems, hindi sila readily available for children and adolescents, di ba? We have a certain age wherein approved lang ang use of pharmacological treatment. So we really would have to resort to something that is behavioral therapy or non-pharmacologic therapy in their cases. So minsan mahirap na when depression and anxiety sets in, it's so hard for us to treat these children. So it is quite important that we build resilience. Parang we are preparing them so that they won't go to that depression or they won't be experiencing anxiety. Okay? And aside from that is that in looking at children, you don't just, treat them, no? You also have to make sure that the adults around the children are also taken care of, no? Do you look after their mental health as well? So that's very important, no? And in looking at the telltale signs, no, for children and adolescents, it is important that we focus on the developmental psychopathology. So in psychiatry, yung developmental psychopathology is the study and prediction of maladaptive behavior processes over time, no? So tinitingnan natin, hindi ko malungkot yung bata, ay sige, depressed na yan. No. We looked at the child's particular vulnerability at a special age, no, at a specific age. That is the reason why it is important that we take a closer look of how a child develops, no. Kaya dito nagkakaroon ng multi-specialty management of the child, okay? So the child neurologist would take care of, the stages and how would the child develop or progress, no, in the development. And then we look into their behavior, and sometimes these are normal development that would go wrong, no? So parang normal na eventually naging abnormal. So what went wrong, no? So those are the things that we have to look into. And of course we have to focus also on specific vulnerabilities, and I'll be touching on that in a while, no? So why are children, no, vulnerable? They are particularly vulnerable because of their limited understanding of the event. They are unable to escape the harms of situation, both physically and mentally, as they have limited coping strategies, no? And aside from that, they may not be able to communicate their feelings like the adults. So ang children natin siguro hanggang 12 years old. So yung mga grade schoolers, no? And na ang cognitive level that they could attain is just, up to a concrete operational. Ano ba yung concrete operational na kind of cognitive thinking? Yun yung hindi pa sila nakakaintindi ng abstract. They don't understand the reasons behind things. So ang ability nila to understand the things that are going on around them is just superficial and very basic. And that particular vulnerability makes them parang prone to developing such emotions na hindi rin nila ma-explain because of their limited cognitive capacity. So that is what makes children very, very vulnerable. And apart from the fact that they may not be able to communicate their feelings like we do, no? Sometimes ang adults mas OA pa nga tayo minsan, di ba? Mag-express of our feelings. Unlike ang children, they couldn't put into words, no, what they feel because of their limited cognitive ability. Aside from children, there is another group that are particularly vulnerable, and these are our teenagers or the adolescents, no? Because the developmental period of adolescence is characterized by identity exploration. there is an increasing autonomy from parents and reliance on peers, no? So there is a movement from inside the home, tapos lalabas sila, no? They would want to be exposed outside, no? So the reliance is more now on the peers, no? Sa mga friends nila. And apart from that, there is a heightened sensation seeking, no? Ang tawag natin dyan, mga risk-taking behaviors, no? And what are this? These are the times that they get exposed to, vices like smoking or drinking alcohol, which they learned outside of the home. So that is the time that they get curious of these things and start to try these things. No? So that's one. So, and apart from that, lalo na yung mga precocious na mga bata, they would be starting their, romantic and sexual relationships at this point in time. And underlying all these changes, socially, there are also biological changes that are happening, hormonal changes that are happening inside the body of this teenager. So those things play a role. And this makes them vulnerable because what is very important among teenagers and among adolescents is we are cognizant of the fact that they are moving away from the home and that ang center na nila would be outside of the home. They rely now more on their peers, mas after sila dun sa status nila among their friends. Unlike before, nung bata sila, all they do is to please the parents, diba? Parang gusto nila yung nasasabihan sila na, oh, you did well, you are good. But this time, at the stage of adolescence, they're more concerned on what the other, teenagers are going to say about them. So parang nagiging ganon. And aside from the fact na yun na nga ang objective nila most of the time is that they are spending more and more time unsupervised with their friends, di ba? So hindi naman natin nasusundan yung social media nila, hindi naman din natin nasusundan yung group chat nila. Sometimes they would have Zoom parties, hindi naman natin alam, no? So they are unsupervised during those times. And the barrier that you have put to protect their children is parang is starting to not just disintegrate, but more likely nagiging vague na yung borders because they are moving outside, no? So that makes them vulnerable. Okay? So when you talk of vulnerability, it is defined, as the child may be susceptible, a degree of susceptibility, so or vulnerable to the impact of risk factors and within the developmental context. So it's a continuum, from low to high, So it is mediated by the dynamic interplay of risk and protective factors. So ano yung risk at ano yung protective factors? Ang risk factors would be the severity of stressors, and it is graded from the mild to moderate to the severe stressors that a child could face. So those are your risk. Now, you talk about protective factors. When you talk of protective factors, we are talking about resilience, and that is what we're going to discuss later. Ano yung resilience, And thresholds vary, So hindi ibig sabihin na what is a stressor for this child would be stressor also for this child, So it vary because it would be an interplay of all the things, Like the characteristic of the child, the support system the child has, and the type and the degree of perceived stressor. So it would vary from one child to another, So yun yung sinasabi nating vulnerability. Okay? And historically, when we look at the development of a child, it has been conceptualized in 5 domains of context, One is genetic, and then you have biological, and then you have family, social, and cultural. But we are adding a sixth, a sixth contextual factor, and that would be school. So tayo yun, which is tayo, because children spend approximately half to 3/4 of their waking hours in school, diba? Although ngayon, parang naging blended na yung bahay mo, yun na din yung school mo. So you're spending your time with the family, although hindi nga lang interactive kasi parang parallel, Uma-attend kayo ng klase together in the house. Pero yun pa din, the waking hours, or the conscious hours, like we spend studying, is spent in school. And most of the time, and this is by experience, ang unang nakaka-detect ng problema would be the advisor or yung mga teachers, no? Sometimes we would get referral. This is just not just for psychiatric cases but for for neurologic cases as well. Say for example epilepsy na absence, no? So sasabihin ng teacher, para pong laging nakatulala yung bata, no? Pwede po ba kayong mag-consult sa doktor, no, para malaman natin kung anong reason behind. So meaning yung teacher, we, no, as educators or sa school, plays a very important role in, you know, in this development, no. And should this go the wrong way, like they develop maladaptive behavior, I think the school still has a role in that. So let's look into this, no, later, no, and why is it important that we are also aware of what's happening with the children, no, not just your children inside your house, hindi yung mga anak nyo lang, no, papakialaman din natin yung mga estudyante natin, okay? And when we talk of mental health issues in children, there are two, no, that are most common and prevalent problems of childhood, and that would be anxiety and depression. And the anxiety and depression in children handbook stated that as many as 1/3 of children and youth experience anxiety and depression over their lifetimes. And apart from this, ito yung pinaka under-identified or misdiagnosed, and at the same time they could go together, no, comorbid with each other. Sometimes for us it is quite hard to delineate which one is anxious, which one is depressed, and which would have both, no, because sometimes the symptomatology overlap, no, magkapareha sila halos. And when you talk about psychopathology or yung maladaptive behavior, you look at three things, no, and this is important for us, lalo na pag titingin na tayo ng red flag sa bata, because not all depressed would just appear sad, and you would realize na meron pang mga ibang bagay that we have to look into. In looking at a psychopathology, be it depression, be it anxiety, or whatever type of mental health issue, you have to always consider three aspects, and that would be cognitive, behavior, or behavioral, and physiologic. Example, cognitive is that they would parang nawawala sila ng concentration, hindi sila yung memory nila is affected as well, hindi sila makapag-isip, no, ng straight, or very sluggish, and there are a lot of parang lag time in their thinking. So that's a cognitive, no, yun yung cognitive manifestation. Behaviorally, they could appear depressed, they could appear sad, irritable, yun yung behavior, yun yung nakikita natin. Physiologically, anong mga pwede? They could, you know, have palpitations, no, nagpapawis sila. They could feel a lot of other things, flush ang skin. Some children may develop tics, no, yung parang may mga movement sa mukha. It's because that's a physiologic manifestation of whatever underlying psychopathology. So when we look at a child, we just don't look for, ay, hindi naman siya mukhang depressed. Hindi tayo nagsastop doon, no? Because in looking at a psychopathology or a maladaptive behavior, you look into these three aspects because the manifestation could differ from one child to another. Okay? So it could just be a cognitive manifestation. The child is very inattentive, no, or it could be behavioral, na hindi lang siya lumalabas ng kwarto niya, no, there is social withdrawal. So, or it could just be physiologic, ang dami niyang nararamdaman, masakit lahat, no, masakit ang ngipin, masakit ang ulo, masakit ang tiyan, no, and when you go to the doctors, wala namang nakikitang problema. And those are physiologic manifestations of a mental health disorder. So I guess if there is one thing that you would have to remember out of all of this, is that you look at the mental disorders as not just, you know, psychological and psychiatric or behavioral manifestation. You look at other subtle signs like your cognitive manifestations and your physiologic manifestations as well. Okay, so let's start with anxiety. No? So the central characteristic of anxiety is worry. No? It is an anticipatory cognitive process involving repetitive thoughts related to possible threatening outcomes and their potential consequences. So let me dissect this this definition. So number one is it's anticipatory. Ibig sabihin, it is not yet happening. No, it hasn't happened yet, but you are anticipating. No. Number two, it's a cognitive process. So it's a problem in our thoughts. No. So isip ng isip, di ba? If you hear about somebody who is experiencing anxiety, no, yung mga anxiety disorder patients natin, ganyan ang lagi, no? Hindi ko po mapigil, pero ito yung laging pumapasok sa isip ko, no? And usually pangit yung scenario, pangit yung ending nung repetitive thoughts na yon. This is somehow related to possible threatening outcomes and very bad consequences. So that is what anxiety is, no? And when you talk about anxiety, we go back to, sabi natin, developmental psychopathology, no? Kasi it's one of the basic human emotions, ano? Hindi tayo bawal ma-anxious, no? Because anxiety is one of the basic emotions and is present in all of us at some time, at one point, no? It's often on a daily basis, to some degree. So kahit yung ano lang, before you take an exam or before you present in class or bago ka magturo, di ba? Sometimes you feel that form, or if there is halimbawa parang a deadline that you couldn't beat, no? So you feel anxious, no? You feel all the physiologic manifestations, and there is an ongoing thought of what would happen to you if you wouldn't be able to meet the deadline, no? So merong ganon. We all experience anxiety, and to some degree it is still normal. And in fact, yung children, meron din silang mga normal anxieties na dapat nga ini-expect natin. And if we talk about this, there are two, no? And we call them developmental anxiety. One of the first developmental signs of anxiety in children occurs at about 7 to 8 months of age, no? You call that your stranger anxiety. So they become upset pag hinahawakan sila or approached by unfamiliar people. So ang anong manifestation? Umiiyak, they cling to their parents, no? And they are very difficult to soothe, no? Hindi mo yan mapapatahan hanggang hindi bumabalik yung attachment figure niya, which is usually the mother, no? So that is a stranger anxiety. And this is something that is important and that we should be witnessing in all children in general, because this is a sign of a development, no? Ibig sabihin, they are beginning to differentiate among who are those that are familiar and who aren't, no? So meron na silang discriminating ano. So ibig sabihin, nagde-develop na yung cognitive ability ng bata pag nalalaman na niya kung sino yung familiar at sino yung hindi. Okay? Another one is the separation anxiety. Yan yung sepangs na tinatawag natin, ano. But it's a normal part of the development of a child. It happens between a year to a year and a half, no? And what happens here is that, again, parehas din ni stranger rather. So they cling to the mother, they don't want the mother to leave. And in fact, if you could still remember your children when they were this young, di ba parang ang ginagawa nila is, parang they would tell you a lot of things, no, in their own words, just to stop you from leaving, no? Diba? Marami silang mga ina-utter na words na para to stop the mother from leaving or iwan sila. And this is normal only, no, at this stage, no? And all of this, no, stranger anxiety and separation anxiety should have disappeared by the age of 2. Okay? So beyond that, it is already maladaptive, no? And there are quite a number of anxiety disorders that we see in children, no? So yung separation anxiety, as mentioned, if it goes beyond, no, the age that it is still expected to be seen, no? And ang common na among yung older ones, no, that would experience separation anxiety. And dito rin pumapasok yung school phobia, no, lalo na yung mga first day schoolers na hindi talaga sila hihiwalay dun sa parents, or they would want their parents to wait for them, no, or watch them while in class, no. So yan yung example ng separation anxiety. So they would refuse to leave home or go to school, very reluctant to develop friendships kasi gusto nila sa bahay lang sila, kasama lang nila ang parents nila. They would avoid going out of the house, no? And they would want to sleep with parents, no? So those are examples of separation anxiety. Okay? Another one which we commonly see, no, lalo na sa mga grade schoolers, is the selective mutism. This is a consistent failure to speak in specific social situation. And ang clue natin dito is that when you ask the child to speak in front of the class, she won't be uttering a single word, no? Mute, kaya mute siya. But during recess, when she's with friends, she's talking naman to her friends, no? Or kayo, as teachers, when you approach her outside of the classroom or outside of school and you ask her a question, she could, answer back. So the clue here is it's selective, no? There are particular or specific scenarios wherein the child is rendered mute, hindi sila nagsasalita at all. And it's a form of anxiety disorder. Okay, we could also see some anxiety disorders, so like your generalized anxiety, no? So nakikita natin to sa mga adults, but we could also see it, no, sa mga 10, siguro mga 10 to 13 to 14 years old na of age, no? Dun sila more commonly seen. And they would present with uncontrollable worry, no, about general daily functioning, no? Ang laging concerns nila school and academics, no? Yan ang lagi talaga. And sometimes kung yung family is medyo dysfunctional, it would also take part in the, thoughts. Kasi remember, ang anxiety, it's a thought process. So similar to social phobia, it's also an extreme self-consciousness naman and social discomfort, no? So ito seen also among teenagers. But if you try to backtrack a bit, no, sa bata, no, you would learn that nung mga 10 years old yan, 9 years old yan, very shy, no? So sasabihin sa amin ng mga magulang, actually nung mga 10 years old po yan, Dok, talagang ayaw makipaglaro, no? Ayaw niyang lumalabas ng kwarto, gusto niya sa ano lang po siya. Tsaka ayaw po niya yung ipapakilala siya sa mga ibang tao. So that is some form of like a social phobia, no? So they fear so much any form of social setting. They don't wanna, they don't wanna be exposed to people. Okay? And two more that we see among children is the post-traumatic stress disorder. So hindi lang siya common among mga sundalo na nagpupunta sa war. We could also see post-traumatic stress disorder in children, no? And particularly in children that are, parang victims of abuse, no? So makikita po natin yan dun sa mga physically, verbally, emotionally abused, at saka dun sa mga sexually abused na bata, no? And at the same time, nakikita din natin ito dun sa mga chronically bullied, no? So it's a school setting, the post-traumatic stress disorder is seen among those that were chronically bullied. Yung binubully lang sila lagi in school, no? So they re-experience these traumatic events. They dream about this, they would have nightmares about this, and when they see that figure that caused that, the stimulus or the stressor, they retreat to themselves, no? And would be showing a lot of the symptoms, no? Yung mga physiologic manifestation of an anxiety disorder, no? So that is post-traumatic. So hindi lang post-traumatic nangyayari sa mga victims of war or yung ating mga sundalo, but it also happens to children as well, no? For as long as there is a particular stressor that happened that would really put them into such mental health state. Okay? And then panic attacks, although these are seen among adults, young adults in particular, pero common din siya, no? About 40 to 60% of adolescents individual experience panic attack, no? And this is usually physiologic, cognitive, and behavioral and affective, no? So may palpitations, sweating, no? So this would last for a few seconds to minutes in a day, but this would occur pwedeng minsan more than 10 times in a day, no? And they couldn't, no? There is no warning. They couldn't anticipate it from happening, no? Kaya ang nangyayari among those who are experiencing panic attacks is they're very afraid to go out of the house. Kasi they're afraid to have these attacks outside of the house and they have no one to call to, no? Because the panic attacks, parang thief in the night, no? You don't know when it would, happen. And they could happen successively in a day, no? So very, very important din also yung panic attacks. So these are the most common childhood anxieties that we see, no? Adolescent and children experience this type of anxiety. Okay? And then now we talk about depression, no? So unlike anxiety na meron tayong central cognitive characteristic which is yung worry, in depression wala, no? They worry about many aspects of their lives, no? pre-pandemic, social, and academic spheres. Yan ang laging thoughts nila. But nowadays that we are quarantined and we spend most days at home, nadadagdagan yung nasa isip nila, yung theme ng depression nila. It could now include what is happening, no? So the dynamics inside the home, and may mga bata tayo na hindi maiiwasan that they witness their parents losing their jobs, no? They also would learn that some of their classmates would no longer be enrolled because their parents lost their job. So nagiging added stressor ito, no? So come pandemic, come quarantining, mas lalong dumami yung possible stressors that could affect the child, no? So in looking at depression, we checked about the red flags, no? There are quite a number of red flags that we have to look into. Number one would be sad and irritable, no? But as opposed to adults na pag depressed, kitang-kita mo sa face, 'di ba? Parang may default face sila that that this person is depressed. But in children, it is more of irritability, no? Children and teenagers more of irritable sila. But you have to always remember that the irritability is beyond what is beyond the baseline, no? So kasi may mga batang buryong lang, 'di ba? May mga bata talagang irritable lang eh. Yung parang default na nila yung nakakunot ang noo, talagang sila. But these people, no, these children who are experiencing depression would be irritable na to an extent that is very different from his previous, no? So lagi namang ganon, there is a change from baseline. They are becoming more irritable than usual, no? So that's one, no? Number two would be there would be loss of interest in activities they once enjoy, and this is our kumbaga this is the telltale sign of all telltale signs. In psychiatry, we call this anhedonia. Ito yung mga bata na dati na-enjoy nila yung naglalaro or nakikipag-usap sa mga friends nila or nakikipag-chat, then all of a sudden parang he left the group, yung group chat, no? Or parang hindi na siya lumalabas ng room niya, hindi na niya na-enjoy, no? Those things that keep him happy before, hindi na. Parang wala nang effect sa kanya. The third one would be decline in self-care and personal appearance. Minsan hindi na sila naliligo, lalo na sa teenagers, no? Hindi na sila, wala nang self-care at all, no? Hindi na nila iniisip yung sarili nila. Kasi 'di ba ang mga teenagers very particular yan with how they look, no? Kasi 'di ba sabi nga natin, ang focus nila now is how they are perceived socially by their peers, no? So very concerned sila dyan. Once you see something na meron ng decline in the self-care and the personal appearance, no, they no longer are that active in their social media accounts, we try to look at that, no? Baka meron tayong something na makikita doon. There are clues there that we could miss, no? And then of course there are changes in weight and shift in sleep patterns. It could either be of two ways, no? Either they gain weight or they lose weight, no? Or they have insomnia or hypersomnia, meaning they sleep less, or they oversleep, no? It could either be of two things, no? But you have to also qualify the shift in sleep patterns, no? As discussed by Dr. Castillo last week, na yung sleep patterns could be really, really affected by yung internet usage nila, no? So you have to also know of that, no? Baka naman kasi masyadong into internet and web browsing during the night, kaya talagang alas 2 na natutulog, alas 3 na natutulog. So we always have to qualify the shift in sleep patterns. Next would be sluggishness, no? So may lag time, mabagal, no? Parang it would take a while before they process things, no? Either kahit instruction yan or things you want to tell them, parang in a way, NR sila, no reaction, deadma, because they are very sluggish and slow, no? And they would have harsh self-assessment, no? So ito yung mga bata na hindi ko kaya yan, no? Ang simple-simple nga lang pero hindi ko talaga kaya yan. And this is bordering on self-pity again, ano? So they are, they are very, very very vigilant in pointing out their own flaws, and at the same time they are pitying themselves. And it would eventually lead to the feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. And one thing I would really have to share, and also I highlighted this in red, are suicidal thoughts, no? Because among all these red flags, it is the hardest, no, for us to detect. And I guess at this point we are in a social media era and we are exposed to a lot of things. The most important thing that we have to look at, no, that would give us clues would be, I guess, the social media platform. So their social media accounts, no? Sometimes we look at those, no, because we couldn't the children are so hard to read, no, hindi sila ganoong ka-transparent in terms of their emotions because of the vulnerabilities that I mentioned a while ago. So the suicidal thoughts may not be very evident, no, na by just looking at the child hindi mo naman mababasa yung isip niyan, but you try to look at the kind of post that they share or their post mismo, no, makikita mo talaga yung mga clues there, no. And sometimes it's sad na nagiging parang retrospect, no, because I would just tell you a story about an altar boy, no. We see him every Sunday because he's an altar boy, so he serves in the mass, no. And then all of a sudden we were jolted by the news that he committed suicide, no. And we had no clues at all. Even the teachers in school had no clues. Even his friends, even those that are the priest and all those people that he interacts with every week did not have any idea at all. But when we backtracked and look at his Facebook post, we saw a lot of shares of things, no, that are, bordering on feeling of helplessness. And those are cry for help, no, na we missed. Because yun nga, hindi natin alam, hindi natin nakikita by just merely looking at the child. So I suggest na hindi naman to paranoia, but we sometimes randomly check once in a while the children or our students post, kasi we get clues there, no. So pag meron na kayong parang kasi meron tayong hunch, 'di ba? Sometimes meron tayong parang ganong instinct, no, na parang may something wrong with this kid. You try to, backtrack a bit, no. We try to look at his past posts, no, his social media accounts, and we could get some clues there. Okay, and here, no, I screenshot a few, no, of these screen shares, and these are from teens, no, who are undergoing treatment or those who are experiencing depression. And I particularly like this one, no, and I would like to read it to you. Siguro, yung pinaka-nakakatrauma na part sa paulit-ulit na pain is yung nawalan ka na ng gana sa mga ibang bagay na dati nagkukos sa'yo ng happiness. Like when you do those things, they don't make you feel happy anymore na. You lost another part of yourself. And this is the parang definition, no, from a person that is depressed of what we were talking about a while ago, yung anhedonia, di ba? Loss of interest in something that makes you happy before. So ito, no? And these are words coming from somebody who is experiencing depression. And you could see the number of likes, no? The number of likes and the number of retweets of this particular post. And it saddens me to think na ang daming nakaka-relate dito sa ganitong feeling. And this is a classic example coming from someone who is experiencing it of what an anhedonia is. And that is what I'm telling you. Yun yung telltale sign of all telltale signs. If there's one thing you have to look for in a child that is depressed, yun, the anhedonia. And this is the classic definition of anhedonia. Okay? How about suicide, no? So, ano ba yung effect ni COVID-19 sa suicide rates, no? So, in this particular journal from the Behavioral Medicine Journal, no, which came out just March of this year, they said that they haven't risen yet, no? But we should be cautious about it. So, there is no change. But I would like to point out that this was done among high-income countries, no? And they find it quite different for Japan because there has been a fall and then there was actually a rise eventually. And but they could attribute it to a lot of factors. One is economic and the other one is yung mga celebrity suicide. Because apparently there are a number of celebrity suicides as well in Japan, no? Similar to Korea. So Korea wasn't mentioned here, but I backtrack a bit about Korean celebrity suicides, no? Kasi parang ang dami recently, no? Because we are aware of so many incidences. But when you compare the data of suicide, celebrity suicide 2019, 2020, um, almost the same, no? And even 2018, 2017, parang the same lang din, no? So one explanation here is that because we are becoming more aware, because most of our days we spend in front of our gadgets, no? So na ano tayo sa mga news, exposed tayo sa mga news. And 'di ba, ang Koreans din ay parang naging ano natin siya, 'di ba? Parang stress reliever. So parang nagiging mas ano tayo, mas cognizant tayo of the things that are happening there. So parang yun yung factor. Pero when we talk of the numbers, hindi siya talaga nag-increase at all. Okay? And this could be because of the protective factors that are brought about by the COVID and the pandemic. Akalain nyo yun, may protective factors naman pala siyang nadala. And this is according to this particular journal. Ano? Number one is we may have been more careful in lockdown to stay in touch and more alert to warning signs. So, kasi nasa loob na lang tayo ng bahay, we spend our days with our children and with the family. So, parang nagiging mas extra sensitive tayo and extra aware of what is happening with them. And number two is in the face of crisis, there may have been a greater sense of community getting through it together. No? Because one thing na very, very apparent in patients who would have suicidal thoughts would be that feeling of helplessness and isolation. Now, when you get to be exposed to other news that there are quite a number of people experiencing the same things as you are, parang it becomes less of a burden. Parang there is hope, no? And that is what is meant by this second protective factor that is being given to us by the pandemic, no? So pag nakikita natin that there are people far worse, no, than us, no? Meron silang ini-experience na mas grabe than what we are experiencing. Parang we compare ourselves, no? And parang nababawasan yung feeling of helplessness. And then the third one is the belief that it would soon be over. Okay? But again, this is data from high-income countries. How about the Philippines? No? And this was released last March, no, that the suicide case rise in the Philippines as pandemic tracks, no, and these are the latest figures from the Philippine Statistics Authority, and it shows that suicide incidents rose 25.7%. It is very alarming, no, in 2020 as compared to the 2019 data of your PSA. So here, no, dito sa 2019, yung suicide ranked as, so ibig sabihin we're talking about completed suicide, no, yung natuloy na suicide, because it ranked as in 2019 as the 31st cause of death, no, but in 2020 naging 27th ang rank niya as cause of death. So meaning there is really an increase, no? So it is alarming, no, for the Philippines, no? So sa kahit naman sabihin nila na in higher income countries it is not alarming, it hasn't risen, but still, no, a death is still a death. Even if it's just one suicide incident, it's still a death, and it's still a person we're talking about. So no matter how small the numbers are, it would still remain to be alarming, no? And in the Philippines, it is now indeed very alarming, because we are talking of 25.7% increase. And we're just talking of a year difference, no? 1 year lang, no? Hindi naman to cluster into 10 years or decades na ito yung incidents ng decade 1, ito yung incidents ng decade 2. No, we're talking about 2019 and 2020 here. So this is very alarming, okay? And I would want to introduce to you, if you haven't heard yet of this term, languishing, no? Recently, we've been hearing a lot about languishing, no? More and more psychologists and psychiatrists are talking about languishing. In fact, it's not a mental condition, but it was just a word coined by a sociologist, which was later expounded by a psychologist, no? And if you look at your Merriam-Webster, these are the different definition of your languishing. So to become weak, enervated, no, decreasing vitality, dispirited, no. But it was a term coined by Corey Keast He's a sociologist, and because his research stated or found out that the absence of mental disorder does not necessarily equate to mental health and well-being. And in that case, no, hindi ka clinically depressed, wala ka namang anxiety, no? But you are in that particular state. And he termed that state as languishing. Now, when Adam Grant, an American psychologist, expounded on it, he defined it as a sense of stagnation and emptiness. It wasn't burnout kasi may energy ka pa rin. Hindi rin siya depression because hindi ka pa naman ganun ka-hopeless. But you somehow, no, find it quite hard to be joyful, and you are in a way finding yourself aimless, no? Parang wala kang motivation to do anything. Gusto mo lang mag-linger, no? And that is the meaning of languishing, no? And according to Adam Grant, ito yung middle, no? It's in a limbo wherein at one end, no, in a spectrum, at one end, it's depression, and on the other end, it's flourishing. Ang flourishing is when you self-actualize. Yun yung YOLO. You do things your way, and you do things that would somehow contribute to your progress and growth, to your self-actualization. So ito yung at one end. And on the other hand is depression. And languishing is somehow in the middle. And it is important, particularly at this point of quarantine and pandemic, that we look at the languishing, no? Kasi ito yung masasave pa natin. Because these people, Adam Grant, no, lahat sila, they were advocating predictive health. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Nakita mo sila at the state of languishing, and then you prevent them to going into depression, and you move them towards flourishing. Kaya siya predictive health. And this is in a way preventive, no? Huwag mo na silang hayaang ma-depress, no? So if you are seeing such, such things in children, no, in your students, no? So parang it's about time that we ask for help already, for professional help, no? Baka ma-move na natin siya towards the other end. Okay? Because that is more important, no? So that is what languishing is, no? And all of these things, no, anxiety, depression, stress, no, all of this are happening now, no? So it's not just the pandemic that we have to think about, but it also is happening in this revolution of social media, no? Digital revolution talaga tayo, no? And how is it, no? How is it like to, be in this era, and we are also experiencing this, no? Kaya nga mapapansin natin, no, even global data, there are rapid increase in all the incidences and prevalences of all these diseases during this time, no, of social media era, because now we have more avenues to compare ourselves with others. We know what is happening with other people around us. We get the news very fast, no, parang in a matter of seconds, no, nalalaman na natin. So this parang contribute somehow to the increase or to the rise in the incidences and prevalences of all these mental health disorders. The internet, no? So I would not be dealing much on this because this has been discussed by Dr. Castillo last week. But I would just like to point out that there are also positive things that are brought about by the internet use, no? And of course, nowadays, ang pinaka-importanting contribution niya is yung ating nagagamit siya for online class, no? Because we wouldn't want the education of our children to be disrupted, so we moved automatically, no? Ayokong gamitin yung force, but in a way, we were forced to learn about technology, no, very, very fast. But there are also negative ones. And you could see here that most of these are quite alarming, no? Kasi fake news and misinformation. And sometimes, pag naririnig mo ng paulit-ulit at maraming nagsasabi, it becomes the truth. Diba? So parang hindi na siya factual most of the time. And it's quite impossible to do fact-checking in the internet, no, in the web, no? And of course, yung mood, anxiety, and depression dito din, and the sleep and circadian rhythm changes, okay? And the question is, how are we adjusting so far with the online class, no? So how are we, no? So prior to the pandemic, I didn't know about all this, nor this, no? So I only had Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, no? And then email, no? But yung Blackboard nga, no, just as a story, no, so sabi nila, it has been, parang active na, ito na yung LMS ng UST for 18 years, but I only learned about it ng 2020. No? Pero I'm sure na hindi lang akong mag-isa na naka-realize na it's gonna be helping us a lot, no, as we transition, no. So all of us, no, are now familiar with all this, no, with all these platforms, no, and we were parang forced to learn, no, in a way. We needed to, hindi pala forced, yun na lang yung term natin. We needed to learn this, no, in order for us to move forward and to adapt to the changes. And I guess this mode of teaching and all would have to stay for quite a while, no. And even if we go back to, you know, a bit of the face-to-face, we could not totally forgo of the online platforms. Okay, and now, considering this, we look at the school data, no? So these are 2017 Philippine Statistics Authority data, and they found out that 9%, no, or 3.53 million were out of school youth, no. That is 2017, no. So there are quite a number of children, no, ages yung school age, no, up to the 24, no. So assuming na up to college, no, are out of school youth, no. But in a survey done rather by the DepEd, no, Department of Education, in 2020, this was done August of 2020, they saw already a decrease in the enrollees. So 4 million plus, no, were not able to enroll in August 2020 because they compared 2019 enrollees from 2020, and they found out that there are 4 million people who did not enroll. No? So you would see already that yung out of school youth natin talagang nag-increase siya, no, by the time, because if you would add this na 4 million drop in the enrollment of the Department of Education, this is very alarming, no, and this could be secondary to a lot of factors, no. Economic ang number one cause. Number two is that kasi meron doon, particularly sa college, no, sa medicine maraming nag-leave of absence din, because they thought that hindi maximize ang learning nila in this kind of platform. And I understand, because those are medical degrees, no, na parang ang hirap nga naman na matutunan na tumingin at magpasyente ng online. So some of them applied for leave of absence. And some, yun lang ang reason, no. But mostly, no, if you try to review the data, ang most reason would have to be economic, no. Walang pambili ng load, walang internet sa school, and yung parents na wala ng trabaho. So, iyan yung ating problema. Okay? And as we go to, day by day, no, as we go through yung mga online classes, no, we encountered a lot of problems, and we have heard a lot of, calls from students and teachers alike, no. The students are really requesting if we could go slowly to face already, because they are experiencing the burnout already of a virtual type of interaction in class, and the teachers, no, find it quite hard, no. In their terms, no, they are on call the entire day, which we could all agree, no, because we are all teaching here, no, na parang ang hirap na, no, because you are attending to queries of not just the students but the parents as well, no. So it has parang nawala na yung border between what is personal and what is professional, 'di ba? Kasi dati during face to face, sige, I'm going to teach now, I will entertain all your questions now. Pero mamaya pag uwi ko ng bahay, wala na, hindi ko na to iisipin up until the next meeting na makikita ko kayo ulit. But it doesn't happen, no? It doesn't happen in this type of face-to-face, in this type of virtual virtual platforms. Okay? And there is, just this February, they released a survey which they did in November to December of 2020. No? So this was done by Secure Education Movement. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. It stands for Safe, Equitable, Quality, and Relevant Education. It's a movement, no? And they did a survey. Medyo malaki ang population nila. They surveyed teachers, parents, and students. And you will see here, no? So the grade 1, yun yung not confident, no? So the bigger chunk of the green, the the worse, no? Mas bad siya, no? Because it means that teachers, parents, and students alike are not confident that we are doing this right, no? That this is going to help us in a way, no? So these are sentiments of across all the stakeholders for education, and and this data would somehow make us think, no? Should we innovate more, or should we stop for a while and revisit our strategies? Ano ba ang dapat nating gawin, to make this worthwhile for everyone, for each stakeholder, no? And particularly for students, no? Kasi sila ang pinaka parang it's as if we're experimenting things, no? And sila yung parang guinea pigs natin, And then malalaman na lang natin at the end of each term kung natuto ba sila o hindi, no? Which is yun nga ang hirap. And then the teachers also, no, are seeing more and more dropouts, no, from those. So we are looking here at those who enrolled, no. So hindi ito yung 4 million na hindi talaga nag-enroll. This is drop in the attendance, and I could really attest to this one, no, because yung kahit na nandoon sila, no, kung wari, no, dahil nag-log in sila, but you aren't sure that they are still there at the end of the class, or kahit na andoon sila at all, no, because yun nga, it has become too impersonal. And when you're presenting, di ba, like now I'm presenting, all I could see is yung yung presentation ko. I couldn't see anyone, or I couldn't see anything, no, else. So yun nang nangyayari, no. So nagkakaroon ng drop sa number of students who are attending. I once talked to a DepEd teacher na she teaches in a public school, and she said that it worries her that hindi naman daw nila kinocompel ang student to go. Meron silang parang online na parang siya ng online na nagsisynchronous, no, parang to introduce lang the next module, parang gano'n, she took it upon herself to do that, no, na nagaganon siya. Initially, half of the class attends, okay lang naman daw kasi baka yung iba ang problem is the internet connection, or wala silang load or ganyan, so okay lang sa kanila. But as the days progress, no, as the weeks progress to months and to even towards the end of the school year, isa or dalawa na lang, no? And parang na-dishearten siya. But she could understand, in a way she could understand why there was a drop. Pero she could also not parang refrain herself from feeling so disheartened kasi nga naman, nag-prepare naman siya. So parang this adds to the burnout that both the students and the teachers are experiencing. On our part, agi nating iniisip, kasi ako minsan ganun iniisip ko ano ba tong effort ko, no? Sobra-sobra, pero wala naman, no? Hindi na-appreciate. Yun ang laging linyahan natin. But the students, from their end, is that sobra na, overwhelming, no? I've been hearing a lot of things, no? Parang napaka-overwhelming na ang lahat for me, no? And remember that they are, absorbing all this, no, all your lessons inside their homes, and we are not sure what is happening in the homes, no, in the specific homes of these children, no. So we have to also consider that, no, na hindi kasi sa school controlled natin, pare-pareho sila. In a way, we are homogenizing their experience in school kasi isang environment lang yon, no. Kung may sumigaw doon, lahat sila maririnig yon. But at home, when you're doing an online class, iba-iba ang setup. So you are not talking about a specific baseline here. You are talking about different. And it's so hard to customize your teaching to each and every student, particularly if the class is too big. Like in ours, we could have as much as 220 students attending and signing in. No, and all you could do is just lecture, no, so it doesn't matter, and that becomes a difficulty for everyone. Okay, and lagi nating naririnig na nababurn out na ako. Tayo rin naman sinasabi natin, di ba? I'm experiencing burnout already, no. Pre-pandemic, burnout is already conceptualized, no. it's resulting from a chronic workplace stress. In fact, it's an occupational burnout, no? It's a mental health state pero hindi siya pathology. Hindi pa siya kinaklasify as a problem, no? Hindi pa siya kinaklasify as a mental health disorder, but it is a phenomenon, no? It's occupational, and it involves three things. One is energy depletion or exhaustion. Two is mental distance from whatever he is doing. And three is reduced professional efficacy. And if you try to look at these three main manifestations, we could already detect this with ourselves sometimes and with our students. Sometimes we feel so exhausted. Sometimes we just wouldn't want to open our laptops. We wouldn't want to look at our work, di ba? Parang nagdi-depersonalize tayo. We would just want to sit and languish, di ba? And number three is parang hindi na ganito yung quality natin, no? Parang nagiging ano na ako, parang petics na, no? There is reduced professional efficacy, no? And we are seeing this. And this, according to the European Journal of Distance and E-Learning, they found quite a few reasons why this is happening, no? Why we are all experiencing this online burnout. Number one is it is something new. We were all, ayoko talagang gamitin yung forced, but we all needed to shift online, no? So, kahit na tech savvy ka pa, but if, let's say, for example, your students aren't, or your co-teachers aren't, nagiging problema mo pa rin yun, no? It also affects you. So, no degree of, technical abilities, no, would somehow parang make you not feel na this is something new still, no? Kasi, ano ka pa rin magta-transition ka, no? You transition to something that is digital. Number two is we're missing on the non-verbal communication. And this one, ako yung ganun, I look at my students, no matter how many they are, no, I look at them, I look at their eyes, and I look at their faces, and I get cues from them. Pag medyo mukhang confused and lost, I would have to repeat whatever I said, no? Kasi parang hindi na naintindihan. But when I see them nodding, naiintindihan nila, so I could proceed, no? So my pace in teaching would depend on my students when we were doing face-to-face. But now, it's impossible, di ba? Kahit ipa-open mo pa yung camera nila, sabi ko nga sa inyo, di ba, pag nagpe-present tayo, anong nakikita natin? Yung ating presentation. So it is impossible to do that. So we miss on the non-verbal cues. Number three, technical difficulties. We all are experiencing this, at lalo na we're living in the Philippines, so ang bandwidth natin napakababa talaga. It's harder to make communications, no? That's the fourth one. Dati, pag may hindi ka naintindihan, you could always ask your classmate or your seatmate, or you could always raise your hand and ask the teacher. Pero hindi na siya nangyayari ngayon, di ba? Minsan yung teacher, hindi makikita yung chat or hindi makikita na nag-raise yung hand ng bata. So, hindi maa-address yung question right away. And sometimes, it's too hard to go back na to the previous lesson para lang masagot yung tanong. So, anong gagawin ni teacher? Minsan, dinededman na lang niya yung tanong. Diba? So, those are things that we have to consider na talagang na-limit ng online platform. And the last one, which I highlighted and I think is the most important, is there is no clear work or school and home boundaries. So as mentioned kanina, yung personal at professional nag-merge na, di ba? Kasi parang parang you are, halimbawa, meron mga tao na maswerte that they would have different rooms, no? Na talagang, halimbawa, si mami at si daddy nasa loob ng kwarto nila, they work from home. Si ate nasa kwarto niya, nagsa-study siya. Pero ako, nandito ako sa kwarto ko, nagsa-study din ako. Wala pa ring interaction, no? But yung personal at professional, nag-merge sila in a way, no? Sometimes, di ba, ako guilty ako dito when I'm attending webinar, di ba? Minsan kumakain ka, or minsan may nakita kang madumi, magwawalis ka. So parang nawawala yung delineation, which you couldn't do when you're in a hall or in a lecture hall, di ba? So yun yung nawawala, which is quite hard, no? And it's taking a toll on us. And this now is contributing to the online burnout. If you try to check the internet, there are a number of articles that would talk about, online learning. But I particularly choose this because it is alarming to have almost 50%. So 46% increase in depressive states and symptoms of those students, no? They are experiencing fatigue and burnout already. And this is a US data because this was taken by the Michigan Medicine. No, and these are the reasons, and you would see that most of these are almost similar to what we discussed in the prior slide. Okay, and if you try to check the social media, no, there are quite a number, no, of calls for online burnout. In fact, in UST last term, we had a couple of academic pauses. We call that academic pauses, no, when students and educators alike call for a pause. So there is no synchronous or asynchronous activity. We aren't allowed to give any summative things for the students to tackle during the academic pause. When you speak of academic pause, wala lang, no school related activity whatsoever, no graded or gradable activity could be given, and that is because to the feeling of burnout, no, they are already experiencing that, and a lot, no, so nakikita natin yung mga pinopost ng mga bata, no, that they are experiencing it already. So it is here, no, so and it's indeed here and happening in our midst, no. And the next question is, how do we prevent it if it hasn't happened and occurred yet, no? And this leads me to the last part of my lecture, no, which is how do we prevent all this, no, if at all na hindi pa sila nangyayari, and later on what can we do kung nag-occur na siya, kung nandyan na siya, wala na tayong magawa, nandyan na, no, so what can we do, no? So these are, some tips, no, in promoting resilience amid adversity, no? So how do we protect our children? That's the question. But more so, how do we prepare them to protect themselves? No, because we couldn't be here forever, going protecting them. No, so this is something that we have to instill in children, in our students, in our children, to help them protect themselves. No, so equip them with the necessary resilience so that they could protect themselves, because we wouldn't be here to protect them forever. Okay. So ano ba yung resilience, no? It is defined, no, by psychologists as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, no? So yan yun, no? So simply put, it means bouncing back, no? But I would want to look at it as more of a bouncing forward, no? So it is, parang we work towards moving on and growing. So towards growth tayo dapat, no? So despite adversity, we still bounce forward, we still move forward, we still grow, no? And that is what resilience is, no? And psychological resilience was correlated negatively, meaning this somehow is a protective factor because it is negatively correlated to depression, anxiety, and somatizations. And people with high resilience are less likely to show emotional symptoms during this time of quarantine and pandemic. So baka sabihin nyo, late na po ba? Kasi andito na yung quarantine, andito na yung pandemic, ngayon pa ba tayo magde-develop ng resilience? But it is never too late, no? We could still instill some, resilience. Or if you have already planted resilience among your children, pwede pa natin siyang i-cultivate a little more, no? There is still a chance. So the question is, ano ba? Isusuit up ba natin siya para protected siya? Wala siyang mararamdamang anything, ano? Yung mga lone mower parents na what they do is hawiin lahat ng challenges para sa bata para hindi siya masaktan, hindi siya yun ba yung dapat na natin, type of parenting that we could exercise, or type of ganun ba tayong type ng educators, or are we the ones who would prepare them, no, more of like a Super Mario that could do things, no? Sorry, no, yan yung kaidadan ko, Super Mario pa ako. I'm not so aware of yung mga current cartoons and but si Super Mario would have powers to fight adversities, no? So ano ba dito ang gagawin natin? And I would say that resilience is more of Super Mario rather than Buzz Lightyear, no? Kasi yung isa, pinoprotektahan mo lang siya, no? Sinusut mo siya, no? Ina-armor mo siya. But the other one is that you're preparing him to fight, no? And to have that necessary resilience to go through adversities, no? And studies and researches have identified a number of characteristics of a resilient adolescent or a resilient child, no? And among these characteristics are having one or more adult um, support group, no? So this should mean a stable family. Number two would be good thinking skills. So in a way, this speaks more of intelligence, not just yung IQ, but the EQ as well, and the social intelligence. They should be in a way presenting one to two sets of talents, no? And then they should have an easygoing personality, and most importantly, they should have religiosity or spirituality, no? So hindi natin ko qualify kung anong klaseng religion, but there should be a belief in one supreme being that oversees everything. That is what is important, because at the end of the day, it helps you to be resilient, because you know that there is somebody who is more powerful than you are, that could help you, no? So you wouldn't be feeling helpless. And I think that is one of the most important characteristic of a resilient child. If there is a belief that there is a supreme being that could take care of this, no? And a lot of studies have identified protective factors, and most of these are rooting from home, no? So sensitive and responsive caregiving, so yung parents, no, meeting the basic needs, no? And I would like to point out that it hasn't, kasi meron talagang mga family setups na medyo si lolo at si lola ang nagte-take care. That is inevitable, no? May mga ganon, no? But for as long as the surrogate parents could take care of the child and provide the necessary basic needs and emotional support for the child, and then that would be enough, no? Marami akong kilala na palaki ng lolo at lola who turned out to be, good people, no? Very resilient people. So it's not always na dapat parents, no? It could be a surrogate one, but for as long as all these things could be met, no, by this support system, then that would be enough for the child. And then, of course, you always have to support whoever is taking care of the child, because you couldn't take care of somebody else if you don't take care of yourself. Kasi 'di ba, kung may sakit ka, paano ka mag-aalaga ng isang tao na may sakit din? So you have to take care of yourself too. And of course, we always have to maintain social connectedness, no? We always have to cultivate this, no? And those are protective factors na hindi tayo nag-i-exist here alone. We are not going through these difficulties and adversities alone, but there are people also outside of home that we could relate to. Okay? And in looking at resilience, no, we try to look at this from this perspective. No? This is somehow technical, pero in a way very important for us to learn. No? Of course, the biological, if you could remember, no, diba, sa psychology, laging sinasabi, my nature at my nurture. Nature is something that wala na tayong magagawa because you were born with it na. And then nurture is something that is, the effect of the environment or your circle. No? So in this particular multimodal approach to such disorders, no, yung biological is something that is nature, but because of the advent of technology nowadays, biological becomes still, no, pwede na nating ma-alter, no, pwede na nating ma-enhance, no, and that's, I guess, the work of the child neurologist like us, because we could help you in nurturing, no, the brain of your children, no, we could do something about it yet, no, even if it's genetic and you're predisposed to it, but you would also have the chance to almost always cultivate the brain. There's always a change. Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na neuroplasticity. Yun yung tawag namin sa neurology. Ibig sabihin, nagre-restructure ang brain. Depending on the amount of information na napapasok natin sa kanya, depending on the experiences na na-experience ng tao, nagiging plastic ang brain. It develops further. It restructures as we grow old. So, yung biological, in a way, could still be nurtured. And of course, we know all of these things. And you see, they have included spiritual. Dati, biopsychosocial lang yan. But now, they have always included spiritual in the dynamics of these things. Okay? Now, the next question is, how are we, as educators, promote resilience in school? Pre-pandemic, meron silang in-identify na 3 school qualities. This is pre-pandemic. 1 is a caring relationship between pupils and teachers. Number 2 is if our teaching method is more of a child or student centered, And number three is if we give them enough responsibility and enough opportunities to express themselves, to ask questions, no? Yung hindi tayo nagja-judge, no, sa kanila. Those are the three, no, the three main thrust of schools to promote resilience in children. But, paano natin ito magagawa lahat, no? Parang limited tayo because now we are in the pandemic. And there are two suggestions, no, in this pandemic time. There are two things that you have to make sure in this virtual platform. Number one is to have them a sense of belongingness, and number two is a sense of purpose. No, these two things you have to cultivate in each of the child. No, kahit na matanda, it applies. No, hindi lang mga bata to na parang grade schooler, high school, and even college and postgraduate. No, could benefit from this. You give them some sense of belongingness and some sense of purpose. But the question is how? Paano ba in a virtual platform? Okay? So this one, which came out, in the parent map, and they said that the building, a sense of community would be yun yung belongingness, that gives you somehow a sense of belongingness, and this is the building of yung virtual community, so yung kasi feeling safe and secure inside the school is easy, pero it's quite impossible when we transition to remote learning. So very, very importantly that we provide them with building relationships. And fortunately, it has been found out in researches that it is as simple as child's play. Kaya ngayon naririnig-rinig na natin lagi yung gamification, di ba, in education. So we are already using games in online class, because somehow this gives children a way of expressing themselves through games and through plays, so parang meron tayong sense of belongingness. They might compete with each other or they might play with each other, so it gives them some form of interaction. And apart from that, particularly for larger class, you could divide them into small group, may mga small group discussions tayo. That way, the facilitator could be more focused on each student, So yan yung another way that we could make use of. And that is building a virtual community. In classes that are big, what we do is we divide them into small groups, And then we give them parang halimbawa a group project that everyone has to work for it. Parang they would have a sense of community, albeit virtual. The second one is a sense of purpose, and parang expecting kids to develop a sense of purpose, especially during this time of pandemic, ay napakahirap. It's very hard. But one thing that is important is you make them feel needed, no matter how small the things are that you would want for them to do. Madali lang yung mga batang maliliit eh. Gawin mo lang siyang timekeeper. Sabihin mo lang na, sige, kailangan sasabihin mo si teacher pag time's up na, Kasi pag nag-OT, magagalit ang mga classmates. So parang meron na siyang sense of responsibility, and that is a sense of purpose. For older children, we give them group work, and then you assign specific and customized tasks for each student. So hindi lahat yun ang gagawin, hindi pare-pareho. So halimbawa, ito, since you're good at this one, ikaw ang in charge dito. Ikaw, since you're good at this one, you're in charge dito. And that gives them a sense of purpose. And that is very important. And then, of course, you have to work hand in hand with the family. We have to ensure that they all are also building resilience at home, parallel to what we are doing in school. And this is what I would like to share this. This is by Gemma Alexander, who's the author of the Parent Map. And she said that the time spent with family is invaluable in creating resilience. It is a good time to celebrate past successes, talking about difficulties your family has faced together, and challenges your child has overcome themselves would generate something we need right now, which is hope. Because at the end of the day, we all go home. Ngayon nga, hindi pa, Kasi at home lang naman tayo most of our time, So, at how do we build resilience at home? So, the Centers for Developing Child in Harvard University came out with a lot of mga technical things, no, which I would try to simplify for everyone, but they said that the single most common factor for children who develop resilience is at least one stable and committed relationship, which I mentioned kanina, diba? So it's always the number one factor. And of course, it's a result of combination of protective factors, and there could be a lot. But I would simplify this into number one, providing that support, yet allowing them to be themselves, expressing themselves. But you are also strengthening their qualities in a way that you are giving them much opportunity. And that's it, no? Sa bahay, yun lang yun, yung understanding them, no? Trying to be empathic and looking at things at their perspective. Because tayo, minsan kasi, as magulang, as teacher, ang tingin natin yung sa standards natin. But if you try it from looking from their eyes and from their point of view, nagiging iba yung perspective natin, no? So you try to look at it that way. Because at the end of the day, according to this scientist in Harvard, na over time, the cumulative impact of all the positive life experiences that the child has or that the child would experience and the coping skills could shift the fulcrum towards the positive outcome, no? So kahit na maraming adversities, no, kahit na perennially naka-quarantine yung batang yan, but if there are kahit small positive things that are happening, coping skills, no, little and small wins along the way, it could still tilt the fulcrum towards the positive. No? So that is what is important. And then finally, what if it has already set in, nandiyan na yung burnout, no? Na-experience mo na, nakikita mo na sa mga bata. And the Frontiers in Public Health came up with this, a few suggestions. One is you promote awareness on stress and burnout, and that is acknowledging, tanggapin na natin, no? Na-experience natin, it is really happening, it is really here. No, hindi na natin pwedeng i-deny ang fact na it's here. Number two is that you increase the frequency of breaks between online lectures or during teleconferences and meetings. So, like kami sa medicine, we would have lectures as mga long as 3 hours, no? Ganyan kami. So, what I do is after 45 minutes or so, or after one specific chunk of lecture, I pause for a 10 to 15 minute break, no? And then I go back again, and then again after 45 minutes of another 15-minute break. That way, they would be able to regain, no, yung attention. No? Kasi talagang by the 30th minute, wala na yan. Hindi na, no? Directing wellness campaigns at students to increase their awareness on physical and emotional consequences of increased online time. I would want to touch a little on this because we are sure naman na lahat ng online hours ng bata, no, gadget hours nila are not spent in school. In fact, if you try to get the percentage of it, it would get the smallest percentage, no? Ang biggest pa rin dyan would be social media, video games, diba? Yun pa rin, online games. But yung class would be very, very small portion. So you have to remind them na yung what physical and emotional consequences a prolonged online time could give them, no? So we have to tell them that. This is something new through introducing podcast-based, no, audio recordings as substitute to online visual encounters. But I find it helpful also. The reason being is that when we attend a virtual class, no, talagang naglalabo-labo na. Kayo din, di ba? When you aren't the one who is lecturing and you're just attending, napakadaming pumapasok sa isip mo. Meron kang stimulus overload, no? Because a lot of things are registering sa'yo visually, sa audio, no, so lahat. So in a way, this is one form of like, introducing them lang, no, to something that is audio lang, no? Walang visual. So they could listen to it at their most convenient time, no? Pag bago sila matulog or what, no? Of course, we still have to implement healthy exercises during online sessions, no? We have doctors na talagang matatanda na but would really ask their students to open their camera and exercise pa rin, para lang nakikita, no? Because that is also parang promoting health, no? With kahit na virtual pa yan. And then I particularly highlight this, no? Because this is important. We provide them with the opportunity to share their feelings and mental struggles. else, no? So sometimes pag meron ka namang liberty of time in a class, you could somehow ask them how they are, no? What I do, kasi limited lang yung tsaka po ang dami-dami naming dinidiscuss, I used Kahoot, no? It's a form of like a game. I usually would post poll in a Kahoot and to ask them how they are, no? And yun yung one way of you gauging their emotional state at that point in time, no? So you could parang innovate a lot of things, no? And of course, we still have to practice, healthy habits, no? And this has always been a part of all my lectures on mental health. And these are the 4 things we really have to exercise. We always have to pray because talagang yun pa rin, ano? Spirituality would really play a big role in us going through this, and we always have to think to look at things and find things to laugh about, no? Kahit smallest of things, we still have to laugh. And again, if we would impose our students to find purpose and to seek purpose, we always have to find meaning also, even in the smallest of things that we do. And it is also important to still practice kindness, no? And here I posted the numbers of the National for Mental Health hotline. If you feel that there is a need for you to consult or seek professional help, then you could reach out to them. No? These are free, toll-free numbers you could call, and you would be able to talk to somebody. Okay, and with that, I would like to thank you for staying and for your attention. Thank you very much.
We shall now pause for a 5-minute health break. Thank you.
All right, welcome back everyone. So after that very thorough and comprehensive discussion from Dr. Re, we will be having our question and answer portion. But first, the handouts are already available. Just go to the third portion after chat, Q&A, handouts. Please click download. Then it will be automatically downloaded to your computers. There. So before we entertain some questions and read some insights and sharings, let's have some reminders for our Q&A. Okay, for your questions, kindly type at any time your questions in the Q&A box. We will accommodate as much questions as time permits. To ask a question in person, you will have to indicate first in the chat box that you would like to ask the question in person. And then if you're acknowledged, please accept the invite and unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. Microphones will remain on mute and video cameras turned off until given the opportunity to ask the question in person. All right. So there are many questions coming in already, and during the discussion, Dr. Ed, there are participants who are actively reacting through the chat box, and they are agreeing with your discussion. So
Thank you. Parang I
if
got
there
carried
are,
away. An hour ako, Tina. Sorry.
it's okay, Doc. We really
Oo.
appreciate the talk, and I think that many can relate to the topic. That's why it's really helpful as well. So let's start our question and answer portion. Let me read the questions now. So this is a question from Sir Romualdez Comia, who got 9 votes from the participants. So what is the best advice we can give to parents or guardians who are struggling also because their child or children lost interest in attending synchronous or online classes, intentionally missing their classes and failing to comply with school requirements?
Okay. That's a very relevant question, ano? So, I'm just going to answer that based on what I am doing, and what I am experiencing. Because it's so impossible na mawawala ng interest, no? But I guess, the thing that you could, is parang look into the dynamics inside the home. Because there would always have to be reason why, no? Meron yan, ano? Hindi naman yung bata bigla na lang ayoko na, no? There should be a reason behind it. So one thing is you could talk to the parents and ask them what's happening inside the home, no? Ano bang nangyayari, no? Chances are ano yan, naloko sa video games, napupuyat sa gabi, ayaw na niyang pumasok sa sa class, 'di ba? So those are the things. Number one is, do you know the reason? no? Kasi number two is that we cannot force them, no? Talagang hindi natin sila pwedeng mapigil. And number three, as educators, we have responsibilities as well to the other students, no? Before ganyan ako pag meron akong isang nakitang hindi nakikinig, talagang nininitpick ko yun, talagang hindi ko yun atim. But I was, actually it was the dean of the med school in Bulacan who talked to me na parang do not make it as if parang it's your ang sabi niya sa akin parang goal na to save each student kasi napaka-impossible. You do your best for all the others that are still staying with you, no? And then try to know a little what is happening dun sa isang bata na yon, no? It could be an isolated case or so. So merong reason. If we try to look for reasons, no? Because if honestly, there is no way na pwede kong maibigay na parang one shoe fits all na pwede nating gawin para ma-encourage sila to go back. But of course, if we always have to also check, we always have to innovate. Yun nga yung challenge sa ating mga educators. We have to innovate ways in order to make our discussions and our synchronous classes really interesting for them to stay. Pero yung other portion of it, wherein parang isolated na isang estudyante, we have to look for the reason why, no? There are reasons, and yun yung usually nakikita ko, no? Yung napupuyat sa ibang other things, no? Hindi lang dahil sa pag-aaral. And apart from that is that parang yung iba, internet connection, ang daming pwedeng dahilan or may mga something na nangyayari sa loob ng family, the dynamics inside the family. So siguro yun po. The best way is to talk to the parents and to know the root cause of this, no? And of course,
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Doc. Hopefully we have answered your question, Sir Romualdez. So there's another question from Sir Comia. How can we address or resolve the issue of teenagers who talk less whenever we ask them, how are you? How do you feel? Their common answer is, I am okay, or they will simply shrug their shoulders.
Kanina po I emphasize about non-verbal cues, 'di ba? Kasi tayo din naman, 'di ba? Lumagay tayo doon sa kanilang shoe, 'di ba? Ayaw natin nung lagi na lang tinatanong, kumusta ka na? Tapos kasi tayo, lalo na yung mga bata na depressed po, ayaw nila na tinatanong how they are. Because the moment that they say something, masusundan yun Di ba pag sinabi mo, kumusta ka? Ay, sir, ganito, malungkot ako. Bakit? May sunod-sunod, no? And the questions is limitless. No? Ang dami mong maiisip na gustong itanong. So the child would rather not speak at all. No? Because he wouldn't want to be, to be subject to a lot of questions, succeeding questions that you're going to ask. So the best way here, no, just like in any other, and in fact, a psychologist would tell you also, and kami din, no, sa clinics, no, we do more of the observing rather than the talking. Kasi ayaw ng mga bata yan. Di ba minsan they seek help, pumupunta sila sa guidance counselor because gusto lang nilang ma-share, ma-unload kung whatever is happening with them. Pero hindi sila open to questions that you're going to ask. So I say we take cues in the non-verbal signs that they are showing. So makikita mo naman sa mukha yun, makikita mo naman sa mata yun. So we have to really look into those, no? Take an extra effort to check for non-verbal cues because admittedly ayaw talaga nila ng tinatanong.
Okay po. So let's move on to the next question from Miss Maricar Antonio. I guess this is just a sharing. Very true, it's difficult to focus being a teacher and a mom at the same time. Unlike in a school setting, we can focus. So she is agreeing with the discussion a while ago of the boundary between school and work and at home. So thank you, Miss Maricar, for sharing that. So a question from Miss Marilu Darunday. How can we stimulate the interest of our student in participating in the online class?
Yun po yung sinasabi ko kaninang gamification, no? I know that it's hard because not all of us are tech savvy. Pero it's a way, kasi ako din nag-enjoy ako discovering a lot of things. There are a lot of things. Si Google Suite lang, ang dami nating ma-discover na pwede nating gawin with it that are free for us to download. Ako, I use Kahoot particularly. You could either have a pro account, pero pwede rin siyang free. You could create your own games po doon. And and the students are really parang motivated and interested, no? Kasi it breaks the monotonous na nagle-lecture ka lang, no? Parang it is sometimes I post challenges, no, na sa kanila, no, sa online challenges, sa Kahoot, sa TED-Ed, no. Although this would be, I guess, for higher education, pero pwede rin sa mga high school and senior high school, we could do that. Sa mga bata, madali naman silang i-please, no? You show video, snippets of video, diba, ganun, di ba, yung mga maliliit na bata, very, very, so yun po siguro. And then once in a while, you check the temperature of the class, no? So, in between lessons, you ask how they are, no? Hindi yung pag nag-umpisa ka, dire-diretso ka hanggang matapos, no? Siyempre, are you still following me? No? We have questions at this point, so we could move on to the next. Parang ganon. So, you check the temperature of the class as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Doc. So, from Miss Eugene B. Karangyan, is it normal that generalized anxiety and social phobia in childhood anxiety still manifest on young adults? How can one overcome this anxiety?
Actually, po siya, no? Pag nag-persist nga siya, that becomes pathological, no? Pathological siya. In fact, mas common pa rin lahat ng to, no? Lalo na yung generalized anxiety disorder among young adults, mas pathological. But I cited them because we are seeing also in children, albeit different ang manifestation, but in adults meron, no? So there are two ways on how we could treat it. Number one is psychotherapy. We do behavioral therapy. We expose them. So kung social phobia, we slowly, expose them to society, no? Binibigyan mo sila ng mga assignments, no? Yung psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist does that. Number two is pwede ring yung pharmacological treatment, but ito nga ang hindi natin pwedeng ibibigay sa mga bata, no, because they are not approved for use in children. But for adults, pwede nating ibigay, no, lalo na kung sobrang debilitating na yung mga phobias nila at yung anxiety, no? Kasi minsan ang takot natin dyan, meron akong mga pasyente po minsan na nagda-drive tapos biglang magpa-panic attacks. That's very difficult, no? Very difficult. So yun po, binibigyan na natin ng psychopharmacology treatment, no, for adults. But for children, we are limited to behavioral therapy, no? So kaya po mas ina-advocate namin na prevention tayo bago mangyari, no? Because if it happens, we are limited to the number of ways we could deal with this. Unlike in adults, we could just give them medications.
All right, well, thank you, Doc. So from Miss Clarice Blanco, can we ask for tips on how to observe anxieties and depressions of our learners during blended mode of learning?
Okay. Lahat po ng lahat ng conditions ng mental health, no? It has always, you have to meet one criterion, which is very important, and that is a change from baseline. You have to remember that, no? So now, how would you detect that there is something wrong? If there is a change. So pag ngayon, less and less na yung dati very active tong batang to, but all of a sudden parang wala na. Or yung attendance niya in the class is slowly talagang nawawala until such time na hindi na talaga siya uma-attend. Those are the things. Because it is so impossible, and do not make it as your goal na parang ma-check natin lahat, di ba? Pag kahit na pabukas mo po yung camera niyan, nakikita mo, visual overload ka, di ba? Hindi mo naman, that is one important thing na talagang hindering us from looking at this. But it would always have to be a change in baseline. These are your subtle cues, no? So kung hindi na uma-attend, kung ang grades ang baba na, no? Kung yung pong mga ganong bagay. And then that is the time you reach out to the family or to the people who are, with the child in order for you to know further kung anong nangyayari. But because yung looking at just your screen and checking at their camera, hindi po tayo hindi natin masasabi. Very hard, very hard.
So we really have to observe if there's a change. So from the start and
Yes.
then along the
Exactly.
process. Okay. Thank you, Doc. So from Miss Cheryl Joanne, many of us, if not all, have experienced and are actually experiencing the discussed manifestations, especially in the school setting. What would you strongly suggest or advise the school heads to help students and teachers to at least deviate from those conditions?
Actually, 'pag gagawin po nating, project yung i-advise natin silang isa-isa, it would be very hard. So, it should be a collective effort. Like if you are an administrator and you would want to look for yung mental health, welfare ng ating mga teachers and mga students, we do it collectively. No, it's so hard to customize it, particularly in a school setting. So, we come up with projects. No, ngayon po naririnig niyo lagi yung mindfulness, yung mga ganon, ano, because they help a lot. No, so siguro po yung mga tips na pinakita natin kanina, we could apply it at a bigger scale in school setting. So we also implement, make it a mandate to have breaks between classes, no? Kasi may ibang teacher na hindi dediretso pa rin siya. Wala siyang pakialam, kailangan matapos na to. So siguro if a school administrators we could, parang make it a rule na everyone should pause after the first 45 minutes before yung next lecture, gano'n. So we could also practice that. Number 2 is mindfulness. And number 3, we have to revisit our structure. Kasi admittedly, there are a lot of things that we do when we were face-to-face that we couldn't do anymore. That is a fact. Ano po, napaka-ano. So we do away with paperwork and bureaucracy. That's one thing. Siguro po we simplify things, no? Na parang lahat tayo example po niyan is classic yung what we show in, 'di ba pag nagkaklase tayo at naka-PowerPoint tayo, ang lalaki ng font natin, 'di ba? Sa klase, yung face to face, ang lalaki, no? 'Di ba? Tapos talagang but one thing I've learned, no, in ganito, in virtual is my fonts are effective when they are smaller, no? Kasi imagine, parang yung bata, alam mo yung tumitingin siya sa 3D na kasi ang laki-laki ng mga font mo. Eh, di ba, ang layo naman niya dun sa laptop niya or dun sa gadget niya is not the same na layo niya dun sa screen mo when you were doing it face-to-face. So, yung mga ganong bagay po, we could always adjust and, see the things that how we do things before and develop a new ways of working now that we are transitioning online. And laging importante is you place yourself in their position. What would you appreciate, no? What would I appreciate as a student, no? Ano yung makakatulong sa akin as a student? That way it would be easier for you to think about ways. Maraming ways po.
Okay po. So, here's the next question from Ms. Mirna. Is a 15-minute break healthy enough between periods? We offer that to our students and teachers in NRYS.
Actually, kahit na gaano katagal or gaano kaliit, it's important po. It is enough if I say, kasi depende rin yun sa liberty ng time na meron ka. Kasi may ibang klase na 1-hour class lang. So, kung mag-15-minute, 20-minute break tayo, parang no? So, siguro po depende sa haba ng lecture. Oo, depende rin sa haba. At yung may mga lectures kasi talaga na mind-boggling, di ba? So, siguro we give more short breaks in between, But it works din po yung ganon, na mas marami, na mas maliliit, no, in between. That way, they would have time to digest what they learned and then they are ready to learn another concepts. Pwede din pong ganon.
All right, Doc. The next question is from Miss Sheila Maris. Ma'am, may I ask if I have symptoms of anxiety or it's just a simple fear? One time po, may kasamaan kami sa work na namatay and suspected case po siya ng COVID-19. Lahat po kami nagpanic, especially po sa akin dahil hindi man lang po kami in-inform ng company tungkol sa situation. I'm very afraid to the point na hindi na po ako pumasok sa work. Dagdag pa yung sulsol na ibang tao na need namin mag-quarantine, although hindi naman po kami in-advise. As in, nagpanic po ako, iyak na ako ng iyak, nag-overthinking na ako na baka positive ako dahil sobrang close kami magkausap. Sobrang na-trigger yung pag-overthinking ko. Na kada minuto na inom po ako ng luya or kalamansi. Sobra-sobra pong takot na ayoko na lumabas at in-isolate ko na po sarili ko sa ibang tao.
Okay. Ang sa psychiatry po kasi if you have heard, no, we follow the DSM-5, no? Ngayon DSM-5 na. It started with DS-1, DSM-1, 2. Short of saying na yung DSM, it's a diagnostic statistic manual wherein when do we label a person to be suffering from this particular disease based on the number of criteria that they meet in that particular diagnostic manual. Now, ang anxiety po as a general rule has to be 6 months for adults like you, no? So you have to feel that for 6 months na ganyan ka before we label you to have that generalized anxiety disorder. Now, your question about is it just fear? Probably yes, no? Kasi ang diferensya po ng fear at ng anxiety is that in fear, you know what you're afraid of. And in your case, you do. 'Di ba? Alam mo na yun ang kinakatakot mo na baka makontract mo yung COVID because you had a close contact with someone who had COVID. So that is a fear. As opposed to anxiety, the anxiety, yung worry nila is they couldn't no? To those of you who have experienced anxiety in their lives, yun yung alam nyo 'di ba? Hindi mo alam kung ano ang nagwo-worry sa'yo, nagbabother sa'yo, but there is really something that is bothering you, but you couldn't point out what it is. And that's the difference between the two. In your case, I think it's more of fear. And siguro, ang ano niyan is once na halimbawa nagpa-swab ka and it turned out negative, so it would confirm na hindi mo naman talaga na-contract yung disease, it would slowly abate, no? So yun yung fear kasi nawala na yung threat na magkaroon ka kasi wala naman, negative ang swab ko eh. Paano naman ako magkakaroon ng COVID? So yun, no? So I think what you're feeling is more of fear rather than anxiety. No?
All right. Thank you, Doc. So for the next question from Miss Janine Katingkak. Hello po, Doc. What should we do if we, the teachers, make sure to constantly communicate with the student and they don't want to share or just ignore our message? And then the parent also do the same. They would say, yes, ma'am, we'll do it later, or yes, ma'am, I'll talk to him. Even after some parent-teacher conferences, but still no progress. What should we do to engage the parent to pay more attention to their child's performance as well as their behavior?
Two things po. Number one is you could do only enough, no? As educators, don't take it upon yourself that it's your responsibility na ayusin yung pamilya po nila, no? You could do as much and you are doing more than enough, believe me po, no? Number two is that you get cues from those things, no? Kahit pinatawag mo na yung parent teacher, sasabihin sa'yo, okay lang po, Doc, pero, okay lang po, ma'am, pero still ganun pa rin. Ibig sabihin, there is really an underlying problem in that family. And number one, the parents might be shy or afraid to disclose it to you, or iniisip na you're a third party, you shouldn't be, be aware of all this that we're going through. But it is important that you have reached out to them and you ask them, no, to do something about it. Yung wala silang ginagawa, hindi nyo na po problema yon because you've done your part. Do not make it as a goal to parang save all the children when their parents don't care. Ano po? Napaka-impersonal, but ganun kasi minsan. And it's gonna take a toll on you eventually kung ganun ang iisipin natin. So kung may 60 students ka, tapos lahat yun gusto mong maayos, kahit na walang pakialam yung magulang, ay at the end of the day, kayo po ang magiging pasyente natin. Ano po? So if you did your part already, you're doing enough na. No? Let's not go beyond that. So actually, ang dami nyo ng steps na na-take. Kinausap mo na, nag-parent teacher na, deadma. So sa kanila na yon. The ball is nasa kanila na. Hindi na po sa atin.
Thank you, Doc, for that. I think many educators would like to hear that at this point that we are really making so much effort. So teachers, you are doing as much as you can. So yes, thank you for that, Doc. From Miss Mary Eileen, what help can we give the home when parents are really too busy with their work or tasks and pupil lag with schoolwork? handling primary school pupils. And parents get irritable when followed up. Teachers have extended help to the child, even if they'll do it on one-on-one basis through Google Meet with their child. But the parents would ignore help that is being extended to them. So I guess this is like an
So, yun
extension
din
of
po
the previous.
yun din po yung sagot ko sa inyo, 'no. In fact, I know a couple of teachers na ganyan, ano. Kasi I have a lot of friends na teachers, 'no, particularly sa public school, and they do that. They sometimes do house visits, 'no, in this pandemic, 'no, just to see. Kasi admittedly, hindi naman lahat ng parents are able to help their children. But again, I will go back to my statement kanina dun sa question po ni ma'am, na you are doing enough already. And kahit na sabihin natin yung ginagawa natin is not enough pa rin kasi ganin pa din, but we couldn't make it, as our goal nga to help everyone. Mahihirapan po tayo, no? So ganun po talaga. This is one bad thing about this virtual platform because we are not on the same level, no? Hindi po isa. Sabi ko nga kanina, in school we are homogenizing that. Kasi isang teacher that would answer all the questions that would pop out, 'di ba? Pero sa bahay, si mommy ang itatanong, si daddy ang itatanong, no? Hindi naman pare-pareho wala tayong standard na ganito ang mommy dapat para maging mommy ka at makasend ka ng estudyante doon. Ibig sabihin different ang family. So that's one thing that we have to really look into because that's really a problem. But again, let's go back to that. Do not make it your parang goal, no? Na ikaw ang so-solve noon. Ano po? We could do only so much.
Thank you so much, Doc. So from Miss Maria Cristina Miranda, based on your experience, what would you suggest is the best way on how the school can bring up mental or psychological issues of students with their parents without being offensive?
Actually, I have a couple of students na patients na ang nagre-refer sa akin mismo yung guidance counselor, no? So what they do is that the guidance counselor reach out to the mom, and ang sasabihin ng guidance counselor, ito po yung na-observe ng advisor sa klase. And then the parents, it's up to the parents na kung they would it's in most of the cases na lalo na pag ang guidance counselor ang nakipag-usap, ang parents would really seek help, no, with the advice of the guidance counselor or the advisor. Kasi ganun po siya, no. Wag lang pong gagawing it would be na kasi ngayon this is a very unique setting kasi mas matagal ang bata sa bahay. Baka sagutin kayo ng nanay, wala naman ako nakikitang gano'n, nakikita ko yan 24 hours a day. Di ba? Ganun ang pwede nilang sagutin, ano? So you make it appear na in class, ganun lagi, no? In class po, ganito siya. And he is not like this before. No? And this has been observed by the advisor who knows him pretty well na ganito na siya ngayon. So that way, parang hindi mo rin sila ginajudge na baka may nangyayari dyan sa bahay. Pero at the back of your mind, yan yung tanong mo, di ba? Baka meron kayong ginagawa dyan sa bahay kasi okay naman na ang classroom, pero bakit nagkakaganito yung bata? So siguro nasa play of words lang yan, no? And I would suggest, no, it works for most of yung mga nakikita ko nga po because lagi ang sasabihin, sabi po ng guidance counselor namin, makipag-usap po kami sa inyo. So in a way, yun, through the guidance counselor.
Okay po. Next from Miss Maria Immaculada. School policy, camera on during synchronous class. Students, I don't like to turn on my camera, teacher, because I feel like I am being judged. It adds anxiety to me. What can we do about this?
Actually, I'm not sure with the school po, but in UST, we couldn't compel our students to, that's a rule, actually, the university rule. Because, number one is that we don't have any right to, kasi it would open to a lot of things. Number one is tayo, hindi naman natin, na makikita natin yung background nila. Hindi po lahat ng bata maganda ang background at may sariling kwarto na nagkaklase, no? Sometimes in a room nandoon sila magkakapatid, magkakatabi, nag-aaral, no? So that's one thing. And kaya we weren't asked to so at times that we would request our students to open, meron pa ring hindi nagbubukas, and we couldn't really force them to open, no? Kasi hindi nga kami allowed to compel, even if we request that they open. Kasi yun po yun, no? Although, ang drawback dito is hindi tayo sure kung nandun pa siya. Or number 2, baka may ginagawa siyang iba, no? Just ano po, meron kaming nakita sa YouTube na estudyante, no? Estudyante po namin, no? Nakakahiya man, magdodoktor po to. Nagba-vlog siya sa YouTube. Ang background niya, yung lecture namin na synchronous. So, ibig sabihin, habang naka-open yung synchronous, ay nandoon siya, nagba-vlog. At ang vlog niya ay hindi medically related. Makeup. How to apply makeup, no? Yung mga ganong bagay. But these are isolated cases, no? Hindi lahat ng estudyante ganon. And I guess it would save you a lot of problems if we won't na, no? Kasi maraming reasons po sila, actually. And sometimes, yun po yung because they don't wanna be judged. Because number 1, they could compare also. Mga bata po yan, lalo na ang mga teenagers, they are very conscious, no? So, ba't ang ganda ng background ni ba't ang ganda ng So, yun po ang isang You might want to look at it also as a school policy, or pwede siguro in the beginning you ask them to open their camera if you would want to check attendance, pero during lectures po baka po pwedeng turn off.
Okay, thank you po. So, the next question is from Miss Rowena Vicono. Doc, do you have a face-to-face consultation scheduled in UST? My son, a senior high student, keeps on telling me that he is experiencing depression and anxiety, and he wants to see a doctor to discuss it. When I ask him why he is depressed, he refused to tell me because I might misjudge him na nag-OA lang siya. Ayaw niya rin po ng online consultation.
Okay. Ako po kasi online consultation, but there is one doctor, Dr. Grace Macapagal, no? She's a child psychiatrist. Kasi ako po hindi po ako child psychiatrist, no? Child neurologist po ako in general psychiatry. Si Dr. Grace Macapagal is a child psychiatrist and practicing in UST. So I could ask for her number and yung detail, yung secretary po niya, so you could you could make appointment, no, with Dr. Grace. She's a child psychiatrist and she has a lot of patients po talaga na so your son might want to talk to her.
Okay po, thank you, Doc. So, next po from Miss Leslie. Good morning, ask ko lang po yung anak. Kinakausap ko pero ang hina sumagot. Hindi ko siya maintindihan. Sobrang hina niya sumagot. Pero mga kalaro niya sa internet, ang lakas ng boses. May problema pag gano'n?
May problema po. Kasi siya, parang lulong siya sa internet. Naglalaro po yan, di ba? Kaya hindi ko pinapansin kasi nakakaabala kayo sa paglalaro niya, no? So, yun po. Again, we go back to Dr. Calote Castillo's lecture last week that you impose some rules inside the house, no? When it comes to internet. Kasi it's a different thing po, no? Ibang usapan na naman yan. And it would take us 2 hours naman to talk about the internet and all. Pero one thing that you could do is you always have to set rules inside the house. Very important to set rules also in the internet usage, no? So, say, ang mga bata po, lalo na ang mga bata, nagwo-work pa rin po diyan ang motivation, yung parang reward and punishment system. Hindi punishment na physically papaluin natin pag ayaw tumayo, no? So what I ask the parents of some of my patients to do is that kung halimbawa we set rule ng you could look at the gadget or be at the internet 2 to 3 hours a day. That would include all your assignments, pero hindi pa include yung synchronous class, no? Kasi hindi po pwede nating i-limit yon, no? So, halimbawa, 2 to 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day, no? Malaki-laki na yon. 2 hours a day. It's up to you to schedule what are you gonna do in that 2 hours. Pwedeng yung 30 minutes assignment, tas 1.5, you play, that's okay. But we have to set a rule that it's just 2 hours a day. Then, should you go beyond 2 hours, that would be deducted to your number of hours tomorrow. So kung nag 3 hours ka ngayon, 1 hour ka lang bukas. In a way, the child is learning how to how to parang yung time niya ayusin niya, 'di ba? Magse-schedule siya, magpa-prioritize siya. Ano ba yung mga dapat kong gawin, no? And then, kung gusto mo, you could also reward him. So, kung halimbawa consistently ay sumusunod 2 hours or half hour lang yung nagamit niya. So, you could add another hour tomorrow because I would want to reward you because you've been following my rules, no? So, I guess we have to, naku, napakadami na pong naisip ng mga nanay na gawin, no? Magpatay ng wifi, pabuto ng sila rin ang nagko-consume kasi kailangan din nila yung internet, 'di ba? So I guess that's one important thing. You sit together with your husband or with your wife and with your children as well. And then you ask them also. Hindi yung i-impose ko lang na 2 oras lang dapat. You ask them, what do you think is the number of hours that is good enough for you to be in the internet, no? To be online, no? Syempre pag ang sagot naman sa iyo napaka 10 hours ganun, hindi pwede, no? So you have to at a point compromise, no? So ganun po, nagwo-work pa din po 'yon even kahit sa mga teenagers, no? Nagwo-work pa din po yung rules na 'yan.
Okay po, Doc. Thank you. So next, good morning, Doc. Knowing the red flags of depression, how long can we say that a child is depressed? We had a speaker before told us that it takes 6 months observation before we can say that a child is experiencing depression. Is it still the same at this time that we are experiencing this pandemic?
Actually, there are a number of types of depression. May persistently dysphoric mood ka lang, so that's persistent na mood disorder, no? But there is also a major depression. And yun nga yung sinasabi ko na the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, meron po tayong pina-follow na ganun in psychiatry. Generally, a unipolar na major depression, ito po yung talagang depression, clinically na depression talaga. Ang inaano natin is 2 weeks, no? 2 weeks po. 2 weeks of the active na depressed na yung a change from baseline na And they enumerated 9 symptoms na you have to meet at least 5 of those 9 symptoms in 2 weeks time in order for you to label that child as a major depression. Now, yung meron po kasi lalo na sa mga bata, usong-uso yung parang persistently malungkot lang sila. Yun ang default, dysphoric mood ang tawag namin. Yun po yung talagang nagtatagal, no? In fact, we would usually set limit for a year na gano'n, na o-observe natin na gano'n, and not without symptoms for like more than 2 months. So, ibig sabihin, mga 10 months and 12 months, persistently sad siya. And it's another type of depression. So, depende po, no? Napakaraming different types of depression. And the clinically depressed, yung tinasabi ko sa inyong 2 weeks kanina, yun po talaga would really need pharmacological intervention already. The 6 months, we apply that also in terms of treatment. Kaya ganun Kasi minsan, pag nagtitreat ka na, pag naging okay na, tinatanggal nila. Ang problema natin doon yung rebound. That's why we would usually tell them that you have to observe yourself a little bit more, no? 6 months is our minimum. 8 weeks for the medications to take its effect, but 6 months you have to look into. And we have to wait for at least 1 year that you're okay before we start doing something about your medications. And dapat po importante yun na sinasabi namin sa mga pasyente at the start of the Otherwise, sasakit po ang ulo ninyo kasi babalik yan sa inyo. Nagkaroon lang siya ng temporary na naging okay kasi mas malaking problema yung rebound. Hindi mo alam kung itutuloy mo ba yung inumpisahan niya, dadagdagan mo ba yon, iibahin mo ba yon, mas malaki pong problema. Okay? So, depende po sa type ng depression.
Okay po. So, next question from Miss Julie Jean. My daughter seems to have school anxiety. Since she was grade 7, she gets nervous in attending classes. Now she is incoming grade 9, and her nervousness is still evident, especially now that her online classes is about to start. How can I help her overcome her fears?
I think something happened in grade 7. If you are not aware of that yet, I suggest that you try to discover that, no? Kasi she's perfectly okay up until grade 7. Pwedeng dahil from grade 6 na grade 7, so it could be a change in school environment. Pwede po 'yon. pwedeng naiba yung section niya or lumipat siya ng school or may nangyari. So you have to discover that first, no? Know about that primary, what resulted into that. And I would suggest na siguro, mahirap kasi yung hindi natin alam ang dahilan pero pinipilit natin. 'Di ba? Yun yung sinasabi ko pa kanina po na you always have to go back to the root cause. Ano ang nag-cause nito? Because meron yan dahilan, may trigger po yan. Hindi yan nangyayaring bigla-bigla na lang. No? So there would always have to be a trigger. You have to know what the trigger is and you have to address that before, you could talk about the things to do. No? Kasi ganun din po kami. Kaya nga, di ba, pag nagko-consulta kayo ng psychiatrist, tatanungin ka muna, napakahabang oras ng history. Because you would want to know what's the reason behind. Otherwise, it would end up na parang tinitreat mo lang siya symptomatically. Hindi mo masosolve ang problema. Forever na siyang nakaganon. No? So I would suggest po na you know the reason why what happened in grade 7 and at the same time if you could seek na po help, no? Mahirap po yung pilitin natin pumasok kung may something there that is triggering her panic attacks.
Okay po, thank you, Doc. So this is from Miss Comia. This is a follow-up. Knowing the dynamics at home to find out the root cause why students are behaving that way might give a wrong notion of invasion of privacy. As a teacher, we might be crossing the boundaries and not all parents may be ready to disclose information.
Ganito po, no? Hindi naman kayo yung parang, so ano po nangyayari? Parang chismosa lang po ang peg natin. Hindi po, no? So what we could do is, you tell them what you observe in school, no? Kasi hindi natin i-cross ang nangyayari sa bahay. Ito po yung mga nakikita namin sa school, no? And and you could also, from your end, identify the possible causes na galing sa school, no? Ganun lagi. And then, we've exhausted everything po, ma'am. We've checked everything and okay po lahat dito. Meron po ba kayong alam? So, it's not judging them na may nangyayari na po dyan, ano? Kasi wala naman pong problema sa amin, no? Hindi ganon, no? Meron po ba kayong alam na ibang pwedeng panggalingan na source ng stressor ng bata? Hindi po yun appearing as invading privacy, no? Kung ayaw niyang sumagot, di wag siyang sumagot. Diba? Pero kung sinagot ka, edi good and better. Kasi ang objective mo naman dun is you want to help them. Hindi ka naman chismosa lang na gusto mo lang malaman na may problema, siguro dyan, share natin sa iba. Hindi po ganun, di ba ma'am? Ang ating objective is to help them. So that would in a way appear like you're not invading anything at all. Pwede niyong isabihin, you are objective in telling so na ito yung ginawa natin, ito yung nakita natin, but still, no, ganito pa din po. So, meron po ba kayong alam na ibang pwede pang mag-cause nito? And that is not judging that it's really coming from home. No? Bahala na sila kung ang interpretation nila is sinasabi nilang ano. And then, if they could not offer you enough information kasi ayaw nilang i-disclose, then we stop there. No? And again, hindi po natin crusade na i-save sila lahat. If you did your part already and the parents won't cooperate, wala po tayong magagawa. Mahirap pong pilitin ng ayaw.
Okay po. So, next question po from Miss Mary Rose. My eldest told me once that she is depressed, 10 years old siya noon. I was surprised to what she told me. When I asked her why, she answered, di ko po ma-explain eh. But I remember when she was in grade 3, she started to withdraw herself from friends in school. She became irritable. If I ask her what her problem was, she will tell me na wala po. Signs po ba ito ng depression or in denial lang? Or OA ako as a parent? Somewhat disappointed siya sa sarili niya pag di niya nagagawa or di niya na-meet yung expectations niya sa sarili niya.
Okay. So, ganito po ulit. Balik ulit tayo doon, no? So, what really happened when she was in grade 3, no? Ganun po lagi, no? So, we go back to the root cause of it all. Ano ba ang nangyari, no? That would have resulted this. Now, the question of whether na-depress ba siya. Remember po, ang grade 3, ilang taon ba ang grade 3? 8, 9? Ganun ba? Grade 3? 8 or 9, di ba? So, ang cognitive thinking po niyan, hindi pa niya na-explain ang rationalization behind what a depression is, no? And I am yet to see an 8-year-old tell me that he is depressed. And of course, we have to factor in social media. Alam mo po, yan ang in na in. ang in nga ngayon sa social media, 'di ba? If you look at the Twitter, hashtag depressed ako. Yan ang in, no? So parang nagiging social phenomenon siya, no? Kaya minsan nagiging, yun nga, tama kayo, Miss Rose, no? Na parang nagiging OA tayo as parents. Kasi pag sinabi ng bata na nade-depress ako, pero pwede namang narinig lang niya, no? Na yun ang sinasabi ng mga ano na nade-depress siya. But if you could see something, no, there are changes, like what you said, there are changes in how your child is right now as compared to before grade 3. So something might have happened in grade 3. You have to look back and backtrack a bit po.
Okay po, thank you. So, this is the second to the last question for today. So, from Miss Maria Irmi Villaranda. Hi, Doc. My niece, who is turning 5, is very sensitive to loud talks, laughs. Nagugulat po siya pag may nagsasalita ng malakas or pag may tumatawa. Nagagalit po. I'm not sure if this is something developmental or something else. Parang nagugulatin po.
O ayan, Miss Irmi, ipa-plug ko na, no? So you listen to to the two succeeding lectures, no? Because this are, I think this is something that is developmental, no? Eyeballing lang po of what you said and how you described it. And this would be entertained and this would be discussed thoroughly in the next 2 sessions that we would have. No? So meron po kasi akong nakikita dun sa description ninyo that could be a developmental in origin. And this would be discussed thoroughly po by Dr. Avendaño and Dr. Biado in the 2 succeeding sessions. Ayan,
Okay
a-attend
po.
na kayo.
Yes, you are required to attend for the definite answer to your question po, Miss Irmi. So, the last question for today from Miss Jean. Doctora, is it valid for us assessing red flags of depression using the DSM-V online? Is this available in the internet?
Yes, it is available, no? But remember po, ang DSM-5, although all the doctors use it, ano, but it was created by a group of, parang it's a panel of doctors, specialists in psychiatry and psychology to come up with this, to standardize things. Yun lang naman siya actually, so that we could standardize our treatment, our approach, yun lang po ang reason. Of course, you could always use it. Pero ibang usapan na din po yung nag-diagnose kayo na may depression siya, tapos pinainom nyo na ng gamot, no? Because that would be the job of the doctors, the psychiatrists, no? Pero you could always refer to that, no? You could always refer to that, no? So siguro hindi yung validity ang pwede nating but it's more of you could always refer back to that and see, no? Available po sila online actually ang DSM-5, no? And masyado nga lang technical, sometimes mas actually ang lahat ng criteria papapansin niyo pag when you read about it, no, all of them are there is an element of time period of how long you're going to observe this, and there is an element of the quality of the symptoms that you're gonna see. Ganun lang po siya. And then of course the exclusion of all the others, and ang laging importanteng nakikita nyo doon is it should affect the person's occupational, educational, academic, and social relationships. Yun lagi, no, makikita nyo. And magdi-differ lang sila with the symptomatology. Pero minsan kasi, baka mas magandang wag. Kasi minsan ganun tayo, meron tayong ganung ugali. Tingin tayo ng tingin ng mga simptomas, tapos pinipilit natin yung sarili natin na naramdaman natin yon. So it would create more anxiety po sa atin. So leave it to the specialist po to study Pero masyado rin po siya kasing technical, no? The DSM are technical because they are created for academic purposes and for standardization po of the approach to patients with mental health disorders.
All right, we thank you participants for those questions and the sharings in the chat box. At this point, may we ask for some final words from Dr. Tere for before we end our session today?
Okay, thank you very much po. At pasensya na at nag-overtime ako. But if there's one thing that you have to learn from this seminar is that number one is that the mental health in children is real. no? Yun po, it's a fact, no? No matter how different it is from what we see in adults, it is real and it is happening and it is common, no? Common po siya, hindi siya rare na ano. And yung common siya, therefore, they might be misdiagnosed lang or undiagnosed, but what is important is that they are treatable. And it is always best to seek help the earliest time possible, no? I-disregard na po natin yung denial and yung nahihiya tayo o yung stigma ng going to a psychiatrist for help, but it is important. And remember that what we are doing is preventing, no? So resilience po. Resilience should be practiced and should be cultivated inside our own homes. Thank you.
All right. We are really grateful for having Dr. Ed today, and I know that even me learned a lot about anxiety and depression and what to do for the next experiences that I'll be having with students and young ones. So again, we thank you for sharing your Saturday morning with us, Doc.
Thank you.
Now let's look out for our next Chalk Talk online sessions. So we're done with the first two episodes of the Growing Brain Project Caravan series. Next week we shall be having Red Flags, Intellectual Disability. That is on July 3. And then the fourth of this series would be Autism versus ADHD, Must Know for Parents and Educators. That would be on July 10. Please make sure that you attend all the four series, and you'll be having the certificates of each episode on the at the end of the series. Please do visit our Facebook page for more updates. Just look for Don Bosco Press Inc. And of course, you may contact your Salesiana Books account executives to ensure your slots. For other reminders, those who have registered for today's Chalk Talk Online, please make sure to attend all 4 sessions of the series to receive your certificate. The certificates will be distributed at the end of the series. Second, for succeeding episodes of the Growing Brain Project series, expect to receive your invites through your emails, and you have to register to receive your exclusive link to the webinar. For those who haven't downloaded their handouts yet, you may still download them under the handout section. Just click download. And for those who have registered today, you will also be receiving a recording of today's session. Lastly, please accomplish the evaluation survey at the end of this session to help us serve you better. So again, thank you for joining us today at Salesiana Books Chalk Talk Online. We hope to see you again in our upcoming sessions. This is Tina de Guzman, thanking you, and until next time.
Quality education through quality textbooks.